Hello, welcome and good evening ladies and gentlemen to another pair of rounds in the UK Sim Racing community's Porsche Cup Season 7 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing. And today we are back after the mid-season break to charge headfirst into the second half of the season, and we are here in the United States of America, none other than the VIR circuit, known in full as the Virginia International Raceway, located in the state of Virginia, after which it takes its name. And what a formidable further circuit for us to get the season back underway. Consisting of 17 corners, many of which are household names within the state and across the whole of the North American continent. This is a circuit which is all about flow and rhythm. The 17 corners are spread across a couple of extended straights, with overtaking being relegated to the straights. Therefore it's all about carrying the speed from corner to corner and getting the right amount of power down on corner exits, go charging after the place up in front and trying to make a slipstream assisted pass. But along the way, the road surface being narrow and most of the time surrounded by grass and not runoff area, it does mean if you go a little bit too far beyond those track limits, you'll be severely punished and you could be in a race ending instant. Therefore, carry enough speed and get it right and you may just come out all right on top, but for every driver who pushes too hard or pushes too little, it could be a day not to be remembered. And that's why drivers today will need to find the perfect balance in their Porsche 992 Cup machines if they want to come out on top. But as we get ready to go racing today, you're tuning in live by the official UK Sim Racing broadcast, only available on the official UK Sim Racing YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com and search for UK Sim Racing or UKSR in short, and you can tune in there. We say hello to you guys and girls tune in live by the YouTube chat. Indeed, we already have a good number of you in there, including Charles Boschell, also Thomas Cope, also Nathan Scott and Medmo, just to name a few of you. And well, don't be shy, feel free to say hi. And if you're not subscribed to the channel already, then make sure you do so today, so that way you can stay up to date with all the latest live broadcasts from our official series, and also the corresponding highlight reels that come out if you missed the broadcast live. And indeed, those highlight reels are absolutely fantastic and plenty more to come in the future. But as we get ready to go racing today, with all the drivers currently getting set, we do apologise for the fact this broadcast has been delayed by 15 minutes compared to the originally scheduled time. However, let's give you some reassurance in the fact we still have the same programme as before, but everything has just been pushed back by 15 minutes. That was due to a technical issue with the iRacing lobby, but that has been resolved. We've got on top of it here at UK Sim Racing, and therefore it's the same schedule, and we'll come to that very shortly. In the quarantine booth, you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain and Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. Now we bring you all your racing action over the course of today, and indeed the entirety of the season. And speaking of the season, well, we had an absolutely brilliant opening half of the season with our opening 5 rounds. And as we can see here, we start off with rounds 1 and 2 at Road Atlanta, the roller coaster ride of road racing in the United States of America, and that was back on the 29th of June. We then made our way to Belgium for the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps in our first endurance race round of the season, of which there are 3 this season compared to the one last season, because it's backed by popular demand in spades. And then last time out on the 13th of July, we made our way back to the United States of America for the New York Classic, the mecca of road racing in the US of A, Watkins Glen International, in a Cup Classic, which saw our drivers go toe-to-toe, and it really was UK Sim Racing meets Porsche Cup and meets NASCAR. But now that we've had a break week, we are back, and we charge into the second half of the season with VIR today. After today, we'll make our way away from the US of A to what is on the 3rd of August, the Spanish circuit, with the Circuito de Jerez, and that'll be for round number 8 in our second endurance race round of the season. And going from the fast flying corners of VIR to Jerez is going to feel quite familiar for a good number of drivers, but there also we do have some rather considerable elevation changes to take into account. Then in rounds 9 and 10, we make our way back to the United States for the final time this season, and on the 10th of August we'll be at the Road America circuit, and more in the picturesque Elkhart Lake countryside in the state of Wisconsin. It's all going to be about those straight line speed advantages that our drivers will try to crave, and the battles under braking over the extended straights. Then going into rounds 11 and 12, we'll make our way a bit further north up to what is Canada on the North American continent. Now be for the circuit Charles Villeneuve, with many of our drivers looking to keep it clear of the Wall of Champions. That's on the 17th of August in the street hybrid road racing circuit, if you will. And then the penultimate pair of rounds, our final sprint and feature combo of the season. Rounds 13 and 14 will take place on the legacy layout of the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, going back in time to 2008 when the circuit was just about to go through its transition for the purposes of safety and spectacle. We'll run the original layout, which will see our drivers reaching much higher average speeds compared to the modern day layout, now on the 24th of August in the United Kingdom. And then we bring it all to a close with round 15 of 15 in our third and final endurance race round. And on the 31st of August, it will be at none other than the Suzuka Grand Prix circuit. And well, Suzuka needs no introduction for the fact it's a circuit, whenever it appears towards the end of a championship calendar, it is known for championship drama. And we'll talk a little bit more about that then, but we can tell you one thing, we have got an absolutely brilliant calendar still to play out for us, ladies and gentlemen. And and all roads lead to that finale. But as we continue our way back onto the tarmac, let's give you an update on our championship standings after 5 rounds. And as we can see, starting with the Gold Drivers' Championship, it's Thomas Cope who leads the way for Olympus Esports Vanguard. Not in attendance today, indeed he's tuning in via the YouTube chat from holiday. Holiday is well deserved and earned, it should be said, and he's really carved out a lead of 50 points. And when we see somebody carving out a lead this strong early on, well, we're not going to take it so the championship is over. This isn't Formula 1, ladies and gentlemen, with Max Verstappen's dominance, but you could say that Thomas Cope's dominance has really been notable. And whilst his run of wins did come to an end at Watkins Glen last time out, at the same time, with that advantage now and drop scores coming into effect later in the season, he has really set a high bar for everybody to chase. In P2 at the moment is teammate from the sister team of Olympus Esports Titan, Dan Sedgley, and you can see there the advantage that Sedgley has over Corey Lazarus is only 6 points, and therefore the battle for P2 is most definitely on. The Blackout Motorsport driver looking to continue his run of form, with the New Zealander having a great run at Watkins Glen and looking now to try and really consolidate that P3, go hunting after P2 and take the fight to Cope as time wears on. But outside the top 3, a further 8 points behind is Igor Kos from FTR Esports, the dark horse of the gold class, given the fact he's shown absolutely brilliant pace time and time again, and we look forward to seeing how he can bring that pace to life and potentially move himself into the top 3 tonight. And then Philipp Hammer, defending gold champion from Season 6 of Team Germany, and he finds himself once again up against the ropes right now. But much like the story of Season 6, where he's able to defend after going behind for a considerable portion of the championship, really coming alive in the second half of the season, could we see a renewed vigour from Philipp Hammer today, and could we see him potentially take his first wins of the season, which would elevate him all the way up into the top 3? Well, the odds are on for him to do so, but will he be able to do so? Time will tell. A point behind him, Effect Simulations, Paul Busby, the driver you need to watch out for the simple reason he's always willing to give it a go, and he really has sprung some surprises this season so far. And there's Patrick Thompson, Samuel K. Sprout, Khalid Ramadan, and Simon B. Bambo complete your top 10. With Khalid Ramadan there for Somsport in P9, the Somalian driver doing a fantastic job at Watkins Glen, really getting stuck into the battle inside the top 5 and 4 of the podium, and I get the feeling that time will tell when we do see him take his first win of the season as well. Outside the top 10, defending champion from eons ago in the gold class, and therefore double champion much like Philipp Hammer, James Parker for AA Race Summaries at DCW Racing. He's had a slow start to the season on 16 points, but still waiting to find ground, and is showing signs of pace that's growing as time goes on. Well, point ahead of Danny Lee, the privateer. They're the always positive privateer, and still finding his feet with the Porsche 992 machine, and could we see him move into the top 10 today? It's then a gap of 8 points to Nathan Foster from Empire Motorsport, who on 7 is ahead of Elmwood Coutons based on result count pack only, and in P15 it's Lee Deemer for Fix Aldo Aberdare, who is ahead of Jack Atkinson based on result count back as well. Mark Jones, Roxanne Marshall, Stefan Liversidge and Ryan Walker complete your top 20, with Joe Newman P21 there, only outside the top 20 based on result count back for Empire Motorsport, but ahead of Lucas Romano for DBR. On 0 points, Ashley England waiting to still get his first points on the board in the gold class of Chesler Racing. Now on minus points due to post-round penalties, we can see Dean Powell, Lee Holmes, Marcel Fridge and Ben Peterson who complete your gold standings. And then come onto the silver class, and here the story is a little bit different. Whereas in the gold class we have a runaway leader who everyone's trying to chase down. Meanwhile, we have Jeremy DeBova leading the standings by 14 points. However, it's not to say that Jeremy DeBova has not been the early favourite, given the fact he was not in attendance last time out at Watkins Glen, and therefore really seen his advantage reduced quite significantly. But the key thing that occurred at Watkins Glen, his main rivals going into that round of Adam Greaveson and also Chris Rance were not able to capitalise on the absence of the DBR Bowman Challenge driver. If anything, they both had major misfortune, and therefore DeBova's advantage has stood the test of time thus far, and he's back in full force today. Therefore, could we see DeBova break away, or will we see his rivals close up the gap? Well, Adam Greaveson will be the one driver who is targeting to do so. For FR20 Sim Racing, we've seen a lot of pace from Greaveson over the last couple of rounds, but he's not had the luck on his side. Could today be his lucky day, and could we see him take to the top step of the podium? Chris Eddersford, P3 for UKSimRacing admin team, currently suffering from a health issue, which may mean he's not able to race today. We are checking our standings currently, and we do believe he's actually out on the grid, but he may be off the pace as a result, but still he's going to be fighting on as best he can, and given his pace in the first half of the season, we'll expect him to come back onto that pace later on this season, with Sean Cranny-Swash and Alex Hiscox completing your top 5, and Sean Cranny-Swash having his best results of the season last time at Watkins Glen, and I do believe, if my memory serves me correctly, notching up a podium to his name, and therefore the 24-hour Punty People driver continuing to chase down the top 3. Hiscox not too far behind for Team Wales, winning 2 points to Cameron Smith, and it's Chris Rance, Steve Hobbs, Glenn Humblestone and Jeremy Story who complete your top 10. We unfortunately missed the Top Gear Sim Racing driver for an interview last time out, with the key point being that Jeremy Story as well, a driver who's starting to show his flair and pace, and we'll expect plenty more from him today. Wayne Basson completes your run to the best of the rest P11 there for FR20 Sim Racing, only 1 point ahead of Sean Dobie, with Mark Oliver, Jules Bounce and DDD Valament completing the top 15. And outside the top 15, Paul Joseph Collis for Olympus Esports Titan, head of Tresla Racing's Aaron Tresla, with Richard White, Steve Laffoy and Daniel Fritz completing your top 20. And on negative points there, due to post-round penalties, we have Alistair Hatcher and Craig Shield, both at 88 Tech Racing, albeit for the 88 non-hyphen team and also the hyphenated team there, and therefore they'll be looking to try and get themselves into some positive points as soon as possible. And then coming on to the Teams Championship, last but not least, we can see Olympus Esports Vanguard lead the way by 80 points over Olympus Esports Titan. Much like in the Gold Class Drivers Championship, Vanguard right now running away with proceedings, but again, it's early days, and let's not say it's over until it's over, as Olympus Esports Titan right now really trying to hold on to that spot to chase down their sister team and also keep everybody else at bay. Blackout Motorsport, the combined New Zealand and Australian team, continue to show their flair and also run for that P3 position, 5 points clear of FTR Esports, with Effect Simulations completing the top 5 and well on the heels of the top 4. Team Germany a further 5 points behind, with UKSimRacing admin team then marking the leadership of the best of the rest category from P7 downwards, then 1 point clear of Somsport, with AI Race Summaries, DCW Racing and Empire Motorsport completing your top 10. And just outside the top 10 based on result comeback is 24-hour Bunty People, both on 9 points for Empire Motorsport, and FR20 Sim Racing a further point behind in P12. Apex misses in P13, they've missed some huge points so far this season. They'll be hoping then try and turn things around today, with Fixaldo Aberdare and Clicks Racing completing the top 15. And there's 88 Tech Racing, Tresla Racing, Team Wales, DBR Bummer Change and Whiskey Runners Racing who complete your top 20, with Whiskey Runners on 0 points. The same for the Top Gear Sim Racing, with result comeback puts Top Gear Sim Racing behind in P21, and it's DBR, CS Sim Racing UK and 88 Tech who complete your standings there through to P24, with minus points for the last 3 teams due to post-round penalties. But that's our standings updated. Let's come on to our circuit for today, and it's none other than the VIR circuit. 9 and 4 is the Virginia International Raceway. Our drivers are going to be taking on the full course layout of this circuit, located near the uncombined community of Alton in Halifax County of the state of Virginia in the United States of America. And while this circuit is out in the countryside and with its picturesque scenery, it is a circuit which should not be underestimated. It draws swathes of fans to its tarmac year in, year out, hosting major international series including at GT World Challenge America. And the form and factor all about this circuit is all about flow. For as we see from the circuit map provided us by iRacing.com, our drivers will need to wind their way through the 17 corners and carry all the speed from corner to corner and straight to straight. For as they make their way across the start finish line and up towards turn number 1 at Horseshoe Corner, it's going to be about being brave on the brakes and getting a late apex before they flow their way through the Kinker 2 and into turn number 3. NASCAR Bend is the name of turn number 3 in reference to the 1966 NASCAR Grand Prix that was held there, which did see 3 of the biggest names in NASCAR at the time all involved in separate incidents and ending their races, so therefore that corner does have a little bit of a black flag on it when it comes to NASCAR racing in particular, with our drivers make their way out and up towards left hook at turn number 4 and into the right hander at turn 5 and 5A, which then sends our drivers on their merry way along the snake at turn 6. And then they'll make their way into turn 7, 8 to 9, charging their way through the left-right-left combination before heading into South Bend. And as they come through the left-hander there and down into the braking zone for turns 11 and 12, they'll find South Bend as a blind rise apex, which then follows up with a downhill charge into the braking zone for the Oak Tree hairpin. Through the double right and onto the exit there, it's all about getting back to the power as soon as possible to go full throttle all the way down the back straight and up towards the roller coaster corner at turn 14. They're going downhill through the right-hander at turn 14 and into left-hander at turn number 15. Many call this the discount corkscrew, given in reference to the Laguna Seca corkscrew at turn number 8 of the Californian circuit, where here we have a very similar layout, albeit it's a right into a left-hander, but the key point is it's a major elevation change, albeit the 2 corners are separated a little bit more conveniently compared to the corkscrew at Laguna Seca. But either way, as they make their way down through the Virginian corkscrew, and then coming to turn 16 and 17, a hog pen corner, we're coming out of the sweeping right-hander. It's a full blast up towards the start-finish line to do it all again once more, and thank you to iRacing for the circuit map and indeed their brilliant simulator in which it's included. We're going on to our rules for today, because remember, we have to have rules before we go racing. Qualifying wise, a lone qualifying format shall be used, where all of our drivers take to an isolated instance of the circuit in order to deliver their times, and they have 8 minutes to set their best possible time. And race wise, the races shall commence via a standing start, as is the tradition of the UKSimRacing Porsche Cup, with the sprint race grid being set based on the results of qualifying, the feature race grid being a partial reverse grid based on the results of the sprint race, with the top 8 positions inverted. There are no mandatory pit stops in any of the races, and if we do see a driver coming to the pits, it will either be for repair work, of which there are of fast repairs available in each race, 1 in each race to be specific. Alternatively, they picked up a drive-through penalty, and that's because they've been able to accumulate 15 or more instant points. But that's enough rules, regulation, everything in between. We're all here to go racing, ladies and gentlemen, and as we do look to our live pictures here, let's take you through our schedule for tonight. Times in British Summer Time, that's BST, or Universal Coordinated Time +1 at UTC +1. And as we can see, very shortly we're going into qualifying, 8 minutes of qualifying, followed up by the first race of the day, the round 6 sprint, 12 minutes in duration at approximately 8 this evening. And then we will head to the grid for our feature race after a brief breather, approximately a 2-minute breather, and that'll be the round 7 feature at 8:45 tonight, 30 minutes in duration, 2.5 times the duration of the sprint race. And indeed, with that, it's going to be a test of our drivers' endurance and car management. But who will come out on top? That's the big question. Will we make our way then into the qualifying session? And as we do, the final practice session has now concluded, and all our drivers begin to make the way out, and it is time to see who is the master of VIR, at least under a single lap. But as everyone now makes the way out of the pit lane gradually, what do you need in order to do well here at VIR is the big question. Well, this is all about confidence as a driver. You need to absolutely know the feel of your machine in terms of how you've got it set up. And set up is going to be quite pivotal here, with drivers investing as much as possible in straight line speed. But also you need to know how much apex speed you can carry, how late you can brake into each and every corner, and also when you can return to full throttle. You want a car that's stable here, but also that one that is absolutely packed with rotation. And that sounds like a bit of a contradiction in the fact that to have a lot of rotation in the car, you naturally need a car that is unstable. But in return, you don't want to have a car that's too unstable for the simple reason, particularly when we have those sharp direction changes, such in the run through the final 5 corners of turn 14 through to 17A, coming out of what is the Virginian corkscrew all the way through to Hog Pen corner. That's going to be where you essentially want the car to be nice and balanced on the rear end, and the same coming out of the snake and onwards towards turn 7, 8, 9, as we see Marcel Fritsch doing so right now. This is where you want the rear end of the car to be quite planted, so that way you can carry the speed with confidence all the way up towards turn number 10. But either way, as our drivers make the way on through, the key point here being is that you want to be able to use all the circuit width, and you want to have that confidence as the driver that you are able to take every mile an hour from corner to corner. In doing so, that will be the difference between you being on pole and you being down in P10. But as we do see Fritsch making his way on around on his first lap, he did his warm-up lap. All the drivers getting themselves comfortably set, as we also look to Jeremy DeBova, Silver Championship leader going into tonight, of course, back from his holiday, and therefore now all fully refreshed, supercharged and ready to go. And as he makes his way down, we do say hello there to a good number of you who've also said hello in the YouTube chat, including SimRacing community, also David Biggerdite there, and Craig Tillerston. Craig Tillerston cheering on the FR20 SimRacing boys, and we can see Charles Boschel and also Thomas Cope cheering on what is there, the Olympus esports teams. We've also got Nathan Scott cheering on Empire Motorsport, expect them to get a 1-2, or considering their drivers to be completely washed. Well, I think that's a little bit stern there, but that's the expectations at Empire Motorsport clearly. And we can see David Biggerdite saying they enjoyed this track last season. Indeed, this circuit was in season 6, it was the season opener, and a little bit of trivia with regards to season 6 in the silver class, as we do look appropriately to the silver class driver Richard White making his way onto his first flying lap. This was the circuit when nobody wanted to win the feature race in the silver class. We had 5 different leaders in the 30-minute feature race, all of which fell off the circuit, and then it would be, I do believe, Roxanne Marshall would come on through to take the silver class win in what was a run to P2 in the championship come the very end. But Marshall, who was leading originally, fell off the circuit at turn number 14, only to then recover after the lead exchanged hands 5 times, and indeed everybody that day making major mistakes. And that's why this circuit is widely regarded as a very challenging North American circuit. And indeed, some of the corners around this circuit have picked up some rather unsavoury names over the course of its history, which I'm not permitted to repeat live on the broadcast today, as we try to keep this PG-13 where possible. But the key point being around here, indeed, this circuit is much loved or much hated by some drivers. Indeed, it's a little Marmite circuit wherever you go. But as we do see Richard White charge his way from the snake up towards turn number 10 by 7, 8 and 9, he looks pretty composed at the moment as he heads on through. But meanwhile, we do look to Lee Deemer, who takes us around for a flying lap of the circuit as we jump on board. Now as the Gold Class driver makes his way up towards turn number 1 and heading onto the brakes nice and early, braking about 125 metres from corner apex, trailing down into second gear. Now back on the pound nice and early here as he comes on through the exit of turn number 1, not using all the circuit width there, trying to get tyre temperature up, but comes through the kink of 2, straight line braking it into the outside of turn number 3, and as he exits NASCAR bend in third gear, gets himself set up for the run to turn 4. Dropping down to second gear and now going through the left into right. You notice using plenty of apex curve there at left bend or left hook, and now heading on out there, runs a bit wide, and that's going to cost him quite a bit of time coming out of turn number 5. We stay on board here as he makes his way up through the snake now, turn 6 and under the bridge. As he heads up towards turn 7 and 8 and 9, the speed's building it up to top gear, entering X's 150 miles an hour as he comes through 7, then 8, and then 9. Lift off the throttle here, let the car settle, and now braking down to 5th gear, going into left-hander of turn number 10 at 113 miles an hour. Two wheels still on the circuit there as he makes his way into Oak Tree Hairpin, and coming down through turn number 11 into 3rd gear, and now through the right-hander of turn number 12. Goes a bit deep there, misses apex, and I think that may be due to the grass that he's picked up on the right-hand side tyres. Just cost him a little bit of grip under retardation of the car as he now makes his way up the back straight and up towards turn number 14. Now being his way up through the gearbox here into 6th gear, and this is where we'll see our drivers reach their maximum speeds under racing all the way up to 160 plus miles an hour, and in the case of Dima 162 as he breaks his way into turn 14, and as he comes down to 3rd gear, bring the car gently down through the right into left, and as he exits on out now in towards turn number 16, the sweeping left-hander, where's turn 17? There's Hogpen corner, you can't see, you have to brake for the blind apex in the dip, and as he comes through the corner in 4th gear, I think Finlato does a bit more to lap there compared to what he was able to do, but Dima's still getting that tyre temperature up to scratch, and therefore plenty of time still out there. He's got 3 minutes to go, albeit it's only going to allow him to have one more lap in actuality as he crosses the timeline there, and I believe with that run wide at turn number 10, in fact that has been an invalidated lap for Dima, so he is going to have to do it all again, and well, time is of the essence. But as he makes his way on through turn number 1 and into 2, meanwhile we do look to current provisional pole sitter in the golden overall category. This is Samuel K. Sproul on the 46.975, and Blackout Motorsport have definitely been rising to the change over the last couple of seasons. We saw absolutely flashes of brilliance in season 6 on both Sproul and Lazarus in equal measure, and right now we're seeing the same from him again. They are 1-2, but again we do need to keep in mind that we've got plenty of times out there. Speaking of which, Emil Koopmans now dethrones what is there Sproul as Lee also goes P2, but Koopmans, the apex misses drivers, finally hit his apex it would seem, but then we've got more times coming as Sproul goes back to original pole, Patrick Thompson goes P2, so everybody improving right now with 2 minutes left on the clock. Remember there's no overtime in this qualifying session, so when that clock strikes 8 minutes, that's it, that's your lot, but we can see more times coming in, and Philip Hammer with 46.544 now takes original pole. In the silver class, we've all got a lot of drivers yet to get indicative times on the board. The fastest silver driver out there is currently P10. It's Adam Greaveson, who I think will feel very accomplished with that lap, given he's just improved it to a bar of a 47.45. But as the FR20 Sim Racing driver makes his way through NASCAR, Ben loses the rear of the car. He just fights back as he tries to get the power down. He collects the car back to give a good catch there from Greaveson, but unfortunately that is going to be his lot for qualifying. But to be fair, that lap standing currently between him and Alex Hiscox's P14, second place silver, and that is 3/10 almost the gap, so that is going to be quite a margin, and Hiscox has actually put the car into the pit lane, so therefore right now it's to Steve Hobbs, who is currently a whole 3/10 behind, to try and find a way to usurp Greaveson, but it's looking good for the FR20 Sim Racing driver here today, and this could be exactly what the doctor ordered after a difficult day at Watkins Glen 2 weeks ago. But as he makes his way down towards turn at number 11, meanwhile we do look to Chris Eddersford here, and Eddersford right now P22, P8 in silver class, and as we said earlier, currently nursing a back injury, and therefore I think it's going to be more about today just getting some points on the board and getting the car home. I think he may have just enough time to finish this lap. It's going to be very close for Eddersford, but meanwhile we do have Jeremy DeBova heading to the timeline. He's had a bit of a moment out of the final corner, and I think this might not be enough of the DBI Bowman Challenge driver to jump all the way out the order versus Greaveson. I think he will be starting P18 overall, which will be his lowest qualifying session on the grid so far. But to be fair, given the fact he is your silver class leader, everyone is going to have stumbles and trip overs in their championship campaigns, and perhaps for DeBova today, this is the one that is going to go by the wayside. But meanwhile, Simon Bamber improves there to P18, but Philip Hammer goes even faster at the front of the field. He gets the last lap in at the last moment of 46.369, and Hammer absolutely knocking it out the park there, and that is pole position for Philip Hammer on the grid going into the sprint. But as our drivers now line up for our first race of the day, let's take a look how they line up on the grid for the round 6 sprint here at VIR. Philip Hammer for Team Germany takes pole position in the end by almost 3/10 ahead of Blackout Motorsport's Samuel K. Sproul. On row number 2 is Patrick Thompson for Olympus Esports Vanguard and Blackout Motorsport's Corey Lazarus. Row 3 goes to Apex Missers Emil Koopmans and Danny Lee, the privateer, followed up by Lee Holmes at ATEC Tech and Satellite Racing's Ryan Walker on the 4th row of the grid. Then on row number 5, it's the parent of Daniel Sedgley for Olympus Esports Titan and the Empire Motorsports Joe Newman, with Adam Greaveson taking silver class pole position at P11 overall for FR20 Sim Racing. He's joined on on the 6th row for Dean Powell for the Privateer. And on row at number 7, it's the combination of Empire Motorsport's Nathan Foster and Alex Hiscox for Team Wells, the 2nd place silver driver. We then have the silver driver Steve Hobbs, who starts off your 8th row for FR20 Sim Racing, joined by Team Germany's Marcel Fritsch in the gold class. Row 9 goes to the silver gold pair, Glenn Humberstone for ATEC Racing and UKSimRacing admin teams Simon B. Bamber, with the top 20 being completed by the silver pair of Jeremy DeBoer for DBL Movement Challenge and Wayne Basson for FR20 Sim Racing. On row number 11 is Sean Cranley Swash for 24-hour Bunty People and Lee Deemer for Fix Auto Aberdare, with Chris Eddersford and Alistair Hatcher making up your 12th row for UKSimRacing admin team and ATEC respectively. And then on row at number 13, it's Richard White the Privateer and Paul Joseph Cliss for Olympus Esports Titan, with Khaled Ramadan not getting a lap on the board and starting P27 on the 14th row, joined by Clicks Racing's Sean Dobie, who starts behind the Somsport driver. And then starting on the 15th row, last but not least in P29, it's ATEC's Craig Shield not getting a lap on the board. Indeed, a lap escaping a good number of drives here today, but we'll have to wait and see how it plays out when we go green flag racing, which we are only 20 seconds away from going green flag racing, ladies and gentlemen. And as the grid gets set here, well, it's going to be a tantalising prospect. It's a run to turn 1. Philip Hammer finds himself back on pole position for the first time this season, and here we'll wait the lights. 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for the round 6 sprint here at VIR as Philip Hammer gets a good start, but look at Sproul on the right of your picture. Sproul bogging down in the 2nd to 3rd gear up change, and as they make their way into turn number 1, it's going to be Thompson who's on the inside here as they make their way into braking. Now Corey Lazarus backs out, they're giving Sproul the opportunity to close the door in. The Blackout Motorsport New Zealand pair working together to make sure they don't lose any further ground on each other. Danny Lee also getting into the fight here, looking for the move versus Emil Koopmans into NASCAR Bend, also covering off Lee Holmes who's getting a bit aggressive, and as they make their way towards turn number 4, well behind we can see a little bit battle in the silver class, but Lee makes a move on Koopmans come back at him into turn number 5, side by side on corner exit, the two of them exchanging blows and they come together and then take each other off the circuit. That's very unfortunate for the pair of them, but as they try to pick things back up, meanwhile Adam Greason here will pull around out of turn number 5, finds himself being swamped by gold class drivers, as meanwhile Steve Hobson company trying to cut their way through in the silver class and go hunting after Greason, but Greason's still got some space. Behind Glenn Humberstone here, tucks in behind Alex Hiscox. And Humberstone gaining quite considerably at the start of this race versus his peers. And meanwhile, Hiscox losing 1 place in class. And Hobbs breaking away, but Humberstone looking up the inside here into Oak Tree Hairpin. Nice move on the inside, goes in nice and warm on the brakes, and well, Hiscox they're not battling too hard. I think respecting the fact he still needs time to get the tyres up to temperature, but Humberstone definitely right now feels like he needs to go racing immediately, as Steve Hobbs in a bit of side-by-side here with Nathan Foster as they make their way down the back straight, with the silver and gold drivers exchanging no time in trading paint, and as they make their way out towards turn number 14, well right now it's going to be Nathan Foster who clears Hobbs, and Hobbs has got the whole run for Humberstone and Hiscox behind as they make their way into the Virginian corkscrew. But as they come down through turns 14 into 15, right now everybody's settling down after a little bit drama on the open laps for a couple of tries. We are hearing that Wayne Basson and also Lee Deemer got involved in respective instance on the opening couple of corners, but after 1 lap it is Philip Hammer who leads the way onto lap number 2 ahead of Patrick Thompson. Thompson there trying to make the charge still as he stays close behind. There's Samuel Casebrown and Corey Lazarus, followed by Lee Holmes P5, Joe Newman P6, Ryan Walker P7, then Dan Sedgley P8, Dean Powell P9, silver leader Adam Greason P10, who's under pressure from Simon B. Bamber, who's P11, and you've got Marcel Fritsch, Nathan Foster, Steve Hobbs and Glenn Humberstone to complete your top 15 as they make their way into NASCAR Bend for the 2nd time of asking. Now, so you may be wondering at this point, who have been the biggest gainers and the biggest losers in the race so far after the opening lap? We can show you that on the left-hand side of your screen. In particular, we do have that on display now, and what we can see there, the biggest loser of all, Emil Koopmans after that contact with Danny Lee coming through turn 4 into 5, and both of them going off circuit together. More Lee in the pit lane and finally leaving the pit lane after repair work. He's just as big a loser with regards to places as Koopmans, so the two of them there really lose now. Meanwhile, the biggest gainer of them all, Simon B. Bamber, gaining 7 places overall since the start of this race, and 4 in class, such as Joe Newman as well. And Joe Newman, in fact, gaining 4 places in class only as Bamber there makes another place up, going around the outside of Greason, the silver leader, into Oak Tree Hairpin. And I think Greason there just respecting the fact they're in different classes and therefore they're in different races in entirety. As they make their way out of Oak Tree and onto the back straight once again, well, definitely quite a few shake-ups in the field. Also Chris Eddersford gaining quite a few places overall, 2 in class but 5 overall, now ahead of Sean Cranley Swash and also Alistair Hatcher. And as they make their way on the back back straight here, Ellis will continue to charge. And I think right now just trying to manage this race and keep it calm and consistent, which is exactly what you need here at VIR. But as he makes his way into turn number 14, well, as our drivers come on through towards the end of lap number 2, see a bit of a lock up the road there, a bit of smoke going up. I believe that's Marcel Fritsch, who's had a bit of a poor run through 15. Is he side by side there, coming down through Humberstone? Oh, goodness me, and it's gone wrong for Alex Hiscox, who there, I think, just been squeezed a little bit to try and go around the outside, and it's gone wrong even further. That is Sean Cranny Swashins followed him off the road. Both drivers there, I think, oh my no, my goodness me, it's another driver, another one going off as well. And turn number 17, Hogpen claims 4 drivers in the space of a brief moment, and what on earth has happened there, we're not quite sure. But meanwhile, we can tell you one thing for definite, Wayne Basson right now is going on the offensive here as he tries to move into P19, going up the inside of Lee Deemer, and as they come on through turn number 1, Basson gains another place. Meanwhile, Deemer and Ramadan battling side by side here, keeping in mind, of course, that Ramadan did not set a lap time in qualifying, so therefore he's having to do this the hard way, the Somsport driver, and there it goes wrong for Basson as he goes round at NASCAR Bend. They're all falling off the road right now, and well, with that, I think it's going to be whoever can keep the car on the road at this point, maybe coming home with a great score in terms of places, if not outright victory. But as we do look from towards the bottom end of the top 20 all the way up towards the bottom end of the top 10, Simon B. Bamber still ahead of Powell right now as Dean Powell chases him down in the run to Oak Tree Corner, and nothing between these two as they make their way through the right hand of Oak Tree this time around. You can see there Powell not strong through the corners, but definitely gaining on the straights. And I do wonder whether Powell's just running slightly less rear wing on his Porsche by comparison with Bamber, and that's enabling him to gain quite significantly. Although I say that, now they're on the extended back straight, it actually looks as though similar rear wing, and it may just be toe and the difference of a couple of apexes between the two of them. But as they make their way into turn number 14, almost at the halfway point of this race, we can see there under braking just how much Powell right now is gaining, and I think it really is Bamber tiptoeing under braking through these corners. And want to be fair, if he's heard about what happened last time around at Hogpen Corner, I wouldn't be surprised if he's decided to take it easy. Well, we haven't got any oil on the track as far as we're aware, although we can see there Roxanne Marshall saying in the YouTube chat about there must be a bit of oil. In fact, that's Nathan Scott saying there must be some oil on the track, but well, there's no oil there, but a lot of drivers getting it wrong. And as they make their way into turn number 1, onto the brakes they go once again, and meanwhile Daniel Sedgley and Ryan Walker exchanging places, like telephone numbers here, and Sedgley moves up another place into P7, going up the inside there, and we can take a look back at how that move was made for 7th place in the gold class and overall. Well, Ryan Walker having a lock up, that explains what the white smoke we saw was the front right brake just locking up for Walker as he came in a bit too hot, and Sedgley saying, well, don't mind if I do, I'll take the place off of you. And as we do return to your live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, well, right now as we reach the halfway point of this race, we bring you the updated individual gold and silver stands on the left hand side of your screen, so that way you can keep up to date with who is where in class rather than the overall. That's where all the points do lie with regards to our drivers' performances in this series. And as we do see Sedgley right now breaking away from Walker, it's gone very wrong for Joe Newman, who loses the rear of the car coming out of turn number 10, and it goes to a time out, and the Empire Motorsport driver, who was of course one of his best performances of the season in the sprint, ends up seeing it all dashed and dotted before he's able to get to the checker flag, and he brings it back together. But that is going to be an Empire Motorsport car now that will be limping most likely for the remainder of this race as he drops down to P12 in class. But as he brings it back together, well, it definitely has been a dramatic first race of the day thus far, and we've still got plenty more to come. Speaking of which, Simon Bamber under pressure from Dean Powell as they make their way into turn 14. Powell looking stronger and stronger with every lap turn as they come on down. This is still for P8 in the gold class, also P8 overall as they head on through and into turn number 16 as they roll their way now into Hogpen Corner. Well, the point here for Bamber is, can he find a way to get a little bit more of a gap between himself and Powell? Because if Powell's closing as he is now, I reckon next time around we could be seeing a move for Dean Powell in the run down towards 14. But as they make their way on to what for them now is lap number 5, and with 5 minutes still on the clock plus a final lap in consideration, we have got some further moments occurring further down the order, including an off for Craig Schill, as we can see their Powell extremely close to the back of Bamber as we ride on board here with the number 24 privateer. And what he makes his way into NASCAR Bend, bring it under braking, and this is the horrible point for Powell right now. When he goes through these corners, he's really got to fight against the dirty air, which will wash off the front end's rotation of the Porsche and the downforce that's applied there versus Bamber, who's running clearer air. But as he exits out of 5, it's very noticeable how Powell just has more confidence in the car. He's able to be more aggressive on exit in terms of trying to get that nose to turn in. It's not always working, but when it does, that's where he's gaining the time. He just has the ability to return to full throttle a little bit sooner. There's something about the way that car's set up and the way Powell's driving it, and it's working to his advantage as he makes his way into South Bend at 10, and now heading up towards 11. You see both drivers there running right out to the edge of the track width. As they come down to Oak Tree again, this time, can Powell find a way to get within 3/10 of corner exit? No, he takes too early of an apex, and despite some wheel spin there for Bambi, you could see the rear of the car having to fight against the driver. Well, it's going to be Powell who loses out the most as he just overcooks the apex line into 12, goes a bit too early. That sends the car wide on exit, and whilst he'll gain now on the toe, he once again finds himself at a distance of 3/10 just so he makes his way into 14, and that's not where he wants to be. But as he comes down and around into the right-hander of 14A and down into 15, and meanwhile we look to the very front of the field as they head towards another lap. 3 minutes still on the clock, and Philip Hammer right now continues to lead this race, holding on to lead comfortably here by 4.5 tenths versus Patrick Thompson. Thompson's throwing everything at this. He was 2 tenths away moments ago, but it looks as though over the last couple of laps, Hammer's now been able to extract a bit of an advantage here. I wonder if Thompson's perhaps deciding to back off slightly and focus on the final laps and just give himself a bit of a breather. But either way, as they make the way on through, we've had an off track for Samuel K. Sprout at turn number 1, I do believe, and the Blackout Motorsport driver who was running inside the top 4, I believe he was running P3 at the time in the gold class, and overall has now fallen by the wayside down to P10 in gold class, P12 overall. Another driver falls victim to the voracious appetite of VIR for seeing Porsches go onto its lovely grass, and as the New Zealander brings himself back up to speed, it's an absolutely challenging day today as he makes his way now through turn number 5, but as he heads up towards what is turn number 7, 8, 9, will meanwhile as he rolls his way on through, we do have a replay coming up very shortly of the incident that occurred earlier on between a number of drivers, and in particular we do get to take a look back at what happened, I do believe, to Alex Hiscox and company, as they all got it wrong, making their way down into turn number 17. And well, with regards to that incident, we do have the replay coming up now. And this was Hiscox making his way down towards Hog Pen Corner, side by side there with Marcel Fritsch, and I think there might have been a small bit of contact between Fritsch and Hiscox, alternative bit too much the apex curve, and then Emil Koopmans following, well in fact that was not Emil Koopmans who followed him off, albeit Koopmans is going to come down into the incident after battling close with Paul Joseph Bliss, goes onto the grass, setting the car, lets go. Well, that explains what happened to Koopmans. We're not quite sure what happened to the 117 car of Sean Cranley Swash, but we can tell you as we take a further look back at that and do focus on Sean Cranley Swash as he made his way downhill here. Well, was this his own volition? I suspect it was. Comes in a bit too hot under braking, and the car just spears straight on there, and that explains what happened to 3 of our 4 drivers who end up with that nasty off on what was lap number 2. But as we return to your live pictures now, 1 minute still left in this race, ladies and gentlemen, so we will still have live pictures all the way to the conclusion now, and so UK Sprout here looking for a move around the outside of Hobbs to take overall P11 there, gets it done quite nicely as they make their way into turn number 1, and we do focus on standings now back on those overall positions for the conclusion. But as our drivers make their way around in terms of other dramatic moments, we haven't had too many quite recently, albeit we've seen a bit of a battle here between Lee Deemer, the Welshman from Fix Auto Aberdare, who goes up the inside with Richard White into turn 1. That's a P19 overall, but as they make their way out of the opening right-handed, they'll have settled down before they get to the turn 2 apex, which leaves us looking towards the front of the field here as Philip Hammer making his way down towards turn number 11 at the moment. It does look as though Thompson's throwing everything out this way. He's getting closer again, it's Thompson, but the problem is here, he's leaving it to very late in the day and really relying now on Hammer making an error, but sometimes that can work. If you do back off and the driver in front notices you backed off, they can become a little bit complacent, albeit at this level, complacency I don't think is a word that's in Hammer's dictionary as they make their way up towards turn 14, indeed in any of the Gold Drivers' dictionary. They'll all be focused on things right all the way through to the end of the race, and as they make their way through left into right here at 14 and 15, well right now Hammer just needing to cruise the car down for the last couple of corners, does not need to do anything theatric at this point, just needs to focus on that turn 17 exit, and if he nails it he will bring home his first win as they make their way down through Hog Pen now, onto the final exit they come, and as they do, checker flag gets ready to wave here, and it will be Philip Hammer who takes his first win of the season as the Team Germany driver leads it to the line. 3/10 clear of Patrick Thompson. It's a win for Team Germany and Philip Hammer with Patrick Thompson P2, and it'll be Corey Lazarus who completes our overall gold podium ahead of Lee Holmes P4, and then Dan Sedgley P5 with the Olympus Esports Titan driver having a good go of the race, but not quite able to get into the podium places. Ryan Walker finishes P6, ahead of Simon B. Bamber P7, and then it will be Dean Powell ahead of Adam Grieveson, who takes the silver class win here in the sprint race stage. Some good points on the board for the FR20 Sim Racing driver, converting that silver class pole position into a win. Nathan Foster P10 ahead of Samuel Case Brown, Steve Hobbs second place in the silver class. It's a 1-2 in silver for FR20 Sim Racing, and a Marcel Fritsch and Jeremy DeBova, who valiantly has pushed his way onto the podium for DBR Bowman Challenge, making sure he doesn't lose too much ground at the top of the field. Joe Newman P15 ahead of Glenn Humberstone P16, Chris Edison P17, P5 in the silver class ahead of Khalid Ramadan, with Lee Deemer P19, Richard White P20, as we see them making their way through turn at 1 into 2. Alan Thatcher P21 ahead of Danny Lee, and it will be Sean Dobie P23, P8 in the silver class for the Clicks Racing driver from Scotland. Ahead of Wayne Basson, who in the end recovers the P24, but a difficult first race today for the FR20 Sim Racing driver. Ahead of Paul Joseph Cliss and Emil Koopmans, and then it will be Sean Cranny Swash, P27, ahead of Craig Schill, who will be our final driver to complete this race, albeit he is almost a lap down here, but he is going to do the full 7 laps, and we did have the premature conclusion of the race for Alex Hiscox, our 29th finisher after our 29 starters, and he's finished a lap down in P29, but as Craig Schill weaves his way on down here, and I believe that Sean Cranny Swash has had to retire with a lap to go, so he will be classified as P28, the 24-hour Punty People driver. I think a technical issue coming up with the car is Craig Schill, who we await to cross the finish line here, and well, still the ATEC Tech driver will be happy that he's finished the race, and that's what it's all about, getting to the end under your own steam. And as he comes on through, he'll take P27 and P11 in the silver class. But my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, what a first race of the day. And well, thankfully, we do have a 5-minute window now in which to take you through those race results and also talk a little bit about the racing. So without further ado, let's take you through our results for our first sprint race here at the Virginia International Raceway. And as we start off with the overall race results then, as we can see on screen, Philip Hammer taking the win for Team Germany in the end by 3 attempts over Patrick Thompson, but the Olympus Esports Vanguard driver keeping the pressure on, particularly in the first half of the race, but Hammer just finding a way to steer clear, and the number 60 flying high at the top of the podium. Corey Lazarus, meanwhile, a further 1.2 seconds behind for Blackout Motorsport. The New Zealander there, I think, ruined what could have been a P3, P4 for the team, but still bringing home a podium and keeping his hunt for the top 2 in the championship very much alive to date, with ATEC Tech Racing's Lee Holmes at P4 there. A good result for the 35 driver, and will finish in the best part of 7 seconds behind the top 3, but still he'll take the accolade of being deep inside the top 5. Daniel Sedgley P5 there for Olympus Esports Titan. I think wondering if he'd had 1 or 2 more laps available, could he have made the jump on Holmes? Well, we'll have to wait and see where he's able to outpace his rival in the next race of the day, with Ryan Walker just missing out on the top 5, but the Satellite Racing driver still P6 there, 1.5 seconds off of the top 5 ahead of Simon B. Bamber, with the UKSimRacing admin team driver picking up the pieces, and in fact one of the biggest gainers over the entirety of the race, having started well down towards the bottom end of the top 20 overall. And Dean Powell, the privateer, finished ahead of Adam Grieveson, with Adam Grieveson P9 overall taking the silver class win, and that's exactly what he's needed to resume his championship season after difficulties at Watkins Glen 2 weeks ago. The FR20 Sim Racing driver picking up some key points on the board. He'll be a little bit gutted to have missed out on the top 8, however, given the fact reverse grid pole will go to the driver who finished ahead of him with Dean Powell, but Grieveson will know he's still got 2 gold drives between himself and closest silver rival Steve Hobbs, and those 2 drives are the P10 finisher of Nathan Foster for Empire Motorsport and Samuel Casebrow for Blackout Motorsport. Special mention to Samuel Casebrow, who was running inside the top 4 for the majority of the race, only to have it all go wrong with a mistake into turn number 1 with 2 laps to go, so that's why he's finished down in P11, with Steve Hobbs P12 there for FR20 Sim Racing, runner-up in the silver class ahead of Marcel Fritsch for Team Germany, and Jeremy DeBoer P14 for DBR Bowman Challenge, and thereby rounding off the silver podium of Grieveson, Hobbs and DeBoer. Joe Newman P15 there for Empire Motorsport. The Empire Motorsport team having a difficult first race of the day, with both drivers falling off the circuit at some stage and looking to try and pick things back up now in the second race that's upcoming soon. Then Glenn Humberstone P16 for ATEC Tech Racing ahead of Chris Eddersford, with Khalid Ramadan completing the run to P18 for Somsport, having started at P27 on the grid, and then Lee Deemer and Richard White completing your top 20. Outside the top FR20, Alistair Hatcher P21 there for 88 Tech. 4 seconds clear of Danny Lee, who with that unfortunate incident early on with Elmwood Koopmans, Indian was relegated to battling for trying to recover to the top 20. Sean Dowie P23 ahead of Wayne Bassam, with Paul Joseph Cliss and Elmwood Koopmans and Craig Shield completing all your finishes on the lead lap through the P27. And then your final 2 spots went to Sean Cranley Swash and Alex Hiscox, who both finished a lap down. P28 for the 24-hour Punty People driver and P29 for the Team Wales driver. That was our first race of the day, ladies and gentlemen, and well, we are not too far away from going racing once again. Indeed, the clock there shows we are less than 2 minutes away, and what a sprint race it has been. We can see many of you there in the YouTube chat absolutely loving it, and indeed talking about all the racing. We also do say hello there to Luke Andrews 59 cheering on FR20 Sim Racing. And we can also see there Nicky Basson cheering on Wayne Basson and the FR20 Sim Racing crew, I would believe. And also we do see there many of you talking about the incident for a good number of drivers, and particularly the off-tracks for drivers going into Hogpen Corner where the 4 cars fell off. We could also see there, and I think I would agree with you there, Nathan Scott, saying that must have felt a lot more natural, Hammer, clear track and get after it. And we have seen Philip Hammer really, when he's leading at the front of the field and he's got a clear track in front of him, nothing seems to slow him down. And indeed, we did see in Season 6 this transition between the first half of the season, the mid-season break, and the second half of the season, where he just suddenly found a way to get himself right back at the front, starting either on the front row of the grid or on pole. And when that occurred, it just all worked out for Hammer, as Joe Newman there does not get it right, and it doesn't work out coming downhill there into turn number 15, 16. So Newman there being caught out by the corner that's caught out so many. And well, with regards to the 1-2 in the silver class for FR20 Sim Racing, a great double podium for the team, and they'll be looking to try and double that up in our second race of the day. But again, all eyes on the Team Germany driver here in the number 60 machine of Hammer. He'll be starting from P8 in the upcoming feature race, and if there's one thing, as we always like to say about the feature race, there are 2 things that are certain in that one. There's going to be plenty of action, and also Philip Hammer will gradually find his way through. And well, we did see it in Season 5, we saw it in Season 6 as well. Some of his feature race drives been defining moments of his championship campaigns in the gold class, and he's looking to make it 3 in a row this season. But as we bring the checker flag out on this warm-up session for the feature race, it's time, ladies and gentlemen, for us to head back to the grid. So as our drivers make their way to the grid for the second time today, this is how they line up for the Round 7 feature VIR. Dean Powell takes reverse grid pole position there, the privateer, joined on the front row by Simon B. Bamber. Behind them on row number 2, it's Ryan Walker and Daniel Sedgley, with Lee Holmes and Corey Lazarus on row at number 3. Patrick Thompson and Philip Hammer complete the top 4 rows from P7 through to P8, with Adam Greason, your silver pole sitter, starting at P9 and looking to make it a double win. When they have Nathan Foster, P10, join Greason on the 5th row of the grid, with row number 6 going to Samuel K. Sprout and Steve Hobbs, who start there just outside the top 10 and both eager to try and make some further progress. And then we have on row number 7 behind them, Marcel Fritsch and Jeremy DeBova. Joe Newman and Glenn Hummerstone make up your 8th row of the grid, followed up by Chris Edison and Khalid Ramadan, with Lee Deemer and Richard White completing your top 20 on row 10. And then row number 11 goes to Alistair Hatcher and Danny Lee, with Sean Doby and Wayne Basson line up on row number 12. Row 13 goes to Paul Joseph Cliss and Emil Koopmans, but we have to stop there, ladies and gentlemen. The grid is set. It's time for the lights. 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out, and away we go for the second time today as Dean Powell gets a slow start, and Simon B. Bamber immediately launches into the lead as they make their way down towards turn 1. Bamber comes across to the middle of the road, then realises he's got all the space to play with and more in the countryside as they make their way for the opening hairpin. Third behind Daniel Sedgley, they're trying to look for the move on the inside of what was Lee Holmes, but in fact the outside now is Patrick Thompson looking for the move as they make their way up towards turn number 3. 2 wide there still between the Olympus Esports drivers. They've got to be careful here not to try and force one another off in the early stages, particularly with cold tyres and cold brakes. This circuit really easy to make a mistake on, as we've seen time and time again. As the drivers make their way through, there's been an absolutely tragic start for Adam Greason, as we're hearing a bit further back. He's dropped all the way to the back of the field in P29. We'll have to take a look at what's happened to Adam Greason very shortly. But meanwhile, as the field comes through, it's a much more sedate opening 6 corners this time around. Everyone keeping it relatively calm, and I think everyone mindful of the fact this is a much longer race, and therefore tyre preservation and calm and consistency are going to be pivotal to success. But meanwhile, further back, Paul Joseph Cliss there letting Marcel Fritsch go, but he's got Alex Hiscox all in 6 as they make the way up towards what is turn number 10, and Hiscox goes up the inside here. Joseph Cliss backs off, and I think that Cliss just not feeling confident with the run of the car and the cold tyres right now. And Wayne Basson also looking for the move around the outside here into Oak Tree. As they make the one through, we've got a bit of smoke up their car off the road, and I believe that is none other. We've got Alistair Hatch around, and Chris Eddersford as well has gone round, and the two of them had a terrible time at Oak Tree Corner, and we'll have to try and come back and understand what's happened about that shortly. But meanwhile, looking a bit further up the road, we've got Danny Lee, who right now chasing after Lee Deemer's got Sean Dobie right behind him, but I think Lee here just gaining places and breaking away from the silver class. He wants to go hunting after gold places, understandably, and as he winds his way down from turns 14 and 15, we look to the front of the field as they make their way towards the end of the opening lap. So after one lap of racing, it's Simon B. Bamber who leads ahead of Dean Powell P2, Ryan Walker P3, Kieran Hot Pursuit, followed up by Lee Holmes P4, Dan Sedgley P5, ahead of Patrick Thompson P6 as Olympus Esports drivers have figured out the order they want to run in, followed by Philip Hammer P7, Samuel Case Brown P8, and there's Joe Newman, Kelly Ramadan who complete your top 10 as we see that Jeremy Doyle looking around the outside of Ramadan, I think trying to get the signal through to the gold class driver, which is if you don't get a move on, I'll get a move on for you. But Jeremy Doyle right now, your silver class leader, he's jumped into lead of the class after taking place of Steve Hobbs and Adam Greaves, and we're not quite sure what happened to Greaves on the open lap. We are about to get a replay of what exactly happened there, but to round off your top 15, we then do have Danny Lee and Lee Deemer who are in P14, P15 respectively, but right now the top three in the silver class all together in a single camera shot. As you can see, DeBoer ahead of Humberstone with Hobbs a further 9 tenths behind, and right now Humberstone trying to come back at DeBoer and trying to extract an early advantage as they make the way up towards South Bend at turn number 10. But as they wind the way up the hill and into the rise of 7, 8 to 9, Humberstone I think having to back off here and recognising the fact that he is going to have a long race ahead of him. He doesn't need to do anything crazy. Speaking of things that have gone crazy, I think Simon B. Bamber's had an off track. He's dropped down to P3. Band side by side here with Lee Holmes as they exit Oak Tree, and Holmes there looking around the outside. Well, he's not going to be too pleased about the fact he's been run off the road a little bit, but then again going around the outside of the hairpin at Oak Tree is a very adventurous approach to say the least, but still if you can make it work, it does work massively. But meanwhile, speaking of making things work, this is Powell versus Walker, and Walker looking around the outside to inside here to try and take the lead of this race. As he does so, going down to the Virginia corkscrew, and it is Ryan Walker who takes the lead for Satellite Racing. Now Walker has been gradually eyeing up further podiums in this series, given the fact he has only had one podium so far in his career, and right now as he charges out of the final corner, well, he's going to be leading right now. He's not going to let that disturb him, but could he be on course today for his first ever win in the Porsche Cup Series? We'll have to wait and see. But meanwhile, looking behind Lee Holmes, they're under pressure on Olympus Esports, as it looks as though Thompson is working with Sedgley here. They're trying to make it around the outside of the pair. Look at Hammer on the left in the rear of the picture. He's watching on. I think he's got a bucket of popcorn there, albeit virtually, and just watching what's happening. As meanwhile, off the road has gone both. What is there? I believe that's Walker and also Dean Powell. Something has gone very wrong for the pair of them, and only moments ago we're saying about it could have been Walker's opportunity to get his first win of the series, and well, the curse of the commentator has definitely hit him hard in the fact now he drops down to P15. But as they make their way through the left hook and into the right-hander at turn number 5, everybody now settles down into a line once again, and with that we have an opportunity to take a look back at what exactly happened to what was Adam Greaveson. Or before we do that, we've got a bit of a battle in the silver class between Sean Dobie and Chris Eddersford as the two of them make their way side by side all the way out of 1 into turn number 3 at NASCAR Bend, and the Clicks Racing driver trying to go all the way around the outside up to turn number 5 where he'll get the inside line, but Eddersford there covering off into turn number 4 and saying nice try, but I see exactly what you're trying to do, and Dobie having to back out. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we do take a look at what happened to Adam Greaveson, and here's the replay. Now, keeping in mind he started on pole for the purposes of this race in the silver class, going into turn 2, goes wide there to give Philip Hammer the space and just takes too much whip to the apex and not backing off with the throwing up, and Greaveson in the end in a very easy to make mistake into the tyre barrier, and that caused the right side suspension to let go of the car, and well, for Greaveson it was a visit to the pits shortly after. But then the big question is, what exactly happened to Simon Bamber a little bit later on? Well, we do have the incident that occurred into the Oak Tree hairpin, and well, we do have a view of what happened to Chris Eddersford and company, and this was Chris Eddersford on lap number 1 going into Oak Tree hairpin. And as he came down into the braking zone, went very deep, and the same for Alistair Hatch. This explains what happened between the drivers as they made their way through the corner, and why they're both on recovery tries now. And then Eddersford later on have been in a bit of contact there with another driver, and that was with Paul Joseph Cliston, the UKSimRacing admin team driver, having a nightmare moment to start off his race. But as we now return to your live pictures, we will get a look back at what happened to Simon Bamber very shortly. But meanwhile, Dean Powell here now battling with Khalid Ramadan, and would you believe it, Ramadan right now has leapt up another 10 places through the order. And in fact, as we do look to the biggest gainers on the left hand side of your screen, you can see that Ramadan and also Daniel Lee really making ground. Elwood Cooper's the same as well, 12 places gained. He is the biggest gainer in this field, and Alex Hiscox has started from the very back of the field to gain 10 there overall. Meanwhile, the biggest losers would be Adam Greaves, who's lost 18th place, and Corey Lazarus, who's down to P22, who's lost 16th. The fortunes are really mixed with regards to our drivers, and as we do see now, Powell trying to hold off Ramadan for the time being. It does look as though here Ramadan starting to really find his feet and his momentum at the VIR circuit after what was a difficult qualifying session, a first race which was all about just gaining some places, but now he's found himself all the way up the order inside the top 10, now going racing with his gold class peers, and I think Ramadan could be a force to be reckoned with as we go a bit deeper and deeper into this 30-minute race. We are 7 minutes in, we've still got plenty of time to go. Speaking of which, Simon Bamber is back into lead this race after everything that's happened, given the incident we saw for Ryan Walker and also Dean Powell, which we also do need to have a look at what happened to them. So we do have a number of incidents which have occurred thus far and really shaking up the field. And meanwhile, as we continue to look at your live pictures, it's 3 wide briefly coming down into turn 17. Well, that's one thing I never thought I would say in my commentating career. It's 3 wide coming down into Ogpen, but there they go, they're able to do it. And meanwhile, as we see our drivers making their way onto another lap, Daniel Sedgley takes the lead of the Simon Bamber in the run to turn number 1. And I think Sedgley getting a better run out of the final corner and defending now into the opening right-hander for Olympus Esports Titan. And Sedgley trying to break away here and eager to do so, given the fact that at any moment's notice this race could toss and turn. But as they make their way in towards NASCAR Bend at turn number 3, well, right now the Briton doing everything he can to power into the distance, and with 7 tenths already in the bag here, I think Sedgley may be able to put this one out to the distance. But as they come up through turn number 5, meanwhile we look to Patrick Thompson, who's not been able to quite find the favour of his teammate in terms of cutting his way through, but the Danishman still trying to get close, and as they make the way up towards with South Bend at turn number 10 by 6, 7, 8 and 9. Well, on the snake they go, and Thompson all over the back of Holmes as they wind their way up through the serpentine sequence. But again here it's about setup. There's the run to Oak Tree, and only after that corner will he be able to look for that potential move as they make their way under braking through the Oak Tree hairpin now. And we do jump on board with Thompson as he makes his way out of the corner, and can he get the better exit here? Well, it looks like it's pretty even between himself and Holmes. In fact, Holmes now starting to gain a little bit, but also in the toe there we have to consider the gap to Holmes, from Holmes to Bamber, is only 2 tenths of that. You can see Bamber in fact having to go defensive there off in the background, so it does look as though Bamber right now under increasing pressure from Holmes, and Thompson having to play the waiting game here as they make their way through turn 14 and down into 15 they descend. But as they wind on through, well, for Thompson, if he can get the double draft here, he may just be able to consider a move into the opening corner, but it's all going to come down to the corner exit. Hogpen time and time again, 2.5 tenths of corner exit gain this time Thompson, but he takes a bit too much speed and the car goes wide there onto the grass, and that's going to bleed all the momentum he needs in order to go for the move as they make their way onwards towards another lap as they charge their way into the braking zone. Meanwhile, the big question that many of you are asking, what exactly happened into turn 1 between Walker and Powell? I suspect it may have been a similar thing to what we've just seen Thompson do, which is a lock up and almost making contact with the rear of Holmes' car. We take a look back, and this is what happened. So going into lap 3, Walker leading under braking, and contact there on the rear of Walker's car from Powell, who just came in a little bit too hot under braking. And I think Powell there trying to get nice and close to make a return move, and Walker really just not expecting that to occur at all. At one point making his apex, and then suddenly the rear of the car winds come around a lot more than he anticipated, and that explains the story there, why Powell and Walker fell down the order, and why Ryan Walker in particular now sits in P13, whereas Powell sits in what is there, we do believe. In fact, there's been a further mistake for Dean Powell. He's dropped down to P21, albeit that further mistake has been off camera and not seen. But as our drivers make the way on your live pictures here, we do look to what is just outside the top 10 overall, albeit it is inside the top 10 of the gold class, as we give you the updated class standings down the left-hand side of your screen. And this is Joe Newman for Empire Motorsport versus Apex Mrs. Emil Koopmans, albeit contained behind Jeremy DeBova, who has lost the lead of the silver class to Glenn Humberstone over the last couple of laps. So there has been an exchange between the two of them in the opening third of this race, but right now it does look as though whilst Humberstone's breaking away, DeBova still running within a second of him, as Newman is now starting to open up a gap versus Koopmans. But as they make the way up towards turn at number 14 and winding the way on down here, Newman looking more aggressive here, looking a bit more fluid with the body language of the car compared to DeBova. And at this point in the race, I think Joe Newman now eager to make a pass here and put DeBova behind him and use him as a bit of spacing to Koopmans, who is very eager to try and come back at Newman as they make the way onto lap number 7. As they charge their way across the timeline, you can see there DeBova keeping over to the racing line on the outside, and as they make their way up towards turn number 1, Meanwhile, it does look as though we had a bit of an instant for Lee Holmes. It just slid his way off circuit there. Well, that's an unexpected moment for the ATEC Tech driver and not a happy one to go with it, as it looks though Holmes has taken a bit of a visit almost to the tyre barrier there. But meanwhile, with that in mind, Jeremy DeBow makes his way on through it, and where on earth has Glenn Humberstone gone in all of this? I think Humberstone's had a similar off on the opening corner, and with that, Jeremy DeBow now retakes the lead of the silver class as they head up towards turn number 5. But you can see there just how easy it is to run wide, and the grass surfaces of this circuit sloping away from the tarmac. So therefore, when you do put a tyre beyond the tarmac, you've very quickly got to bring the car back together, otherwise you just drift away from the circuit and become a passenger in the car in the end. And so many drivers are falling foul of that today. But right now, Jeremy DeBow with the gold pair of Koopmans and Walker behind, I think very concerned about the fact here he just wants to try and take it down a notch, but if he does so and lets Koopmans and Walker on through, then you'll have Steve Hobbs the company as Koopmans says, right, I'm coming through whether you like it or not. And as they make their way through Oak Tree turn 11, looks like their Koopmans get clearance, and Walker does the same here on corner X. It's going to be a drag race between the two of them, but DeBow will have the toe of Koopmans, but Koopmans brings himself over to the right hand side here to take the natural racing line. This will give the slipstream to Walker, so you would imagine Walker now will be able to outpace DeBow into the braking zone. Meanwhile, Hobbs now only 3 tenths behind, has got an opportunity here to go chasing after the lead as they make their way into turn 14. As they wind their way down through the Virginia corkscrew. Meanwhile, we do look from them to Sean Cranley Swash, who's a bit further back, battling for P6 in the silver class here. P20 overall the battle between himself and Sean Dobie, and right now the 24-hour Bunty People driver from Canada looking for the move up the inside of Scotsman as they make their way down the back straight. Swash has had the toe, therefore he's got the overspeed. It's going to be side by side into the braking zone, but which of the two of them here is going to be the bolder of the two? Dobie's going to hope he can go outside to inside, and Swash in the end not confident to force the inside to outside line, and instead backs out there and releases the place once more. But meanwhile, we look from them to the gold class here, and Simon B. Bamber, well, now he's got the unenviable task of trying to keep Philip Hammer at bay, as Hammer trying to look for the move here for P4 in the gold class. Up the inside, into left hook they go, and Bamber there, I think, just being caught out on a slightly deeper line under braking, and Hammer seeing the door wide open and just taking the space as they make the way on out and into the snake. That is Philip Hammer up into P4. Next target is Samuel Case Brown, who's 1.3 seconds up the road, and you can see how the field now starting to space out as Hammer continues to try and chase down another win and trying to make it 2 wins out of 2 here today. And with that, they're definitely bringing right up through the championship standings. As they weave their way through turn number 10 and up towards Oak Tree this time. We're getting into the braking zone here for the double ride. Everyone keeping their cool right now. And Khalid Ramadan continuing to make progress as he makes his way on out of Oak Tree hairpin and onto the back straight. You can see Lee just behind him, and these two have really worked together over the course of this race so far. Once they've come together, it does look as though both drivers on a similar pace, albeit Lee right in the toe here of Ramadan as they make their way on the back straight, but both of them very eager to get into the fight for top 5 finishing positions today. And you can see their Lee taking a little bit of a sniff to a move to the inside into 14, but deciding against it in the end for the simple reason he'd end up unsettling the car such late in the day under braking, and therefore I think Lee just trying to get a message through to Ramadan, which is keep your eyes on the road, but also be mindful of the fact I'm trying to come through. And as they make their way through Hog Pen right now, that's going to put Ramadan on some pressure, but I would imagine the Somali driver focusing more on what he can do behind Bamber, as Bamber right now falling into his clutches. They make their way into turn number 1, and as they do, it's going to be a look around the outside here from Ramadan as we lose him briefly on the right of your pitch, and then he re-emerges. Ramadan trying to cut it back outside to the inside, but Bamber there absolutely parking the car spot on where he needs to, nailing the apex. Now you can see Lee trying to look round to the inside of two, but he can't quite find it as Ramadan gets closer under braking, and now Ramadan's got to drive aggressive to stay ahead of Lee. And that's the thing that Bamber can do here. He can really now start to bunch the group up and cause Lee to get closer and closer to Ramadan and make it so Ramadan's got to take increasingly defensive approaches, and therefore Bamber can just open up a gap. And that's the thing for Wiz Ramadan. A good defense right now is a strong offense, and he needs to try and get this move opened up, as otherwise he's going to be subject to Lee. And with that also, Joe Newman's only 2 seconds away, and Newman is close to this battle very rapidly indeed. But as they make their way into South Bend, rolling on for the left hand here with 3 tenths between Ramadan and Bamber as they come down towards Oak Tree, and onto the brakes they go. Lee once again taking a look up the inside, trying to get in the rear view mirrors of Ramadan, trying to get him to make a mistake, misses braking zone, get in his head, but Ramadan's having none of it as they make their way into the back straight. Half the race complete, still half of it to go here in the round number 7 feature race of VIR, and well, I reckon in the gold class at least, albeit we are seeing also in the silver class to an extent, the battling is only now starting to turn up the notch. But as they make their way up towards turn number 14, Ramadan Ramadan looking to the inside. He's got the overspeed. Can he carry it all the way around the outside? He does so indeed, and Bamba there just not able to outbrake Ramadan into the zone. But as they make the way through, Ramadan goes overly deep through turn 15. Bamba's going to be on the outside, and Ramadan backs off as they make the way down, and Bamba holds P5. But with this battling, they now do have a 2.5 second gap to the top four. So Hammer and company have been allowed to run away with that top four, and Bamba right now really trying to stem the tide. He's trying to force the cork back in the proverbial bottle, and he's doing a fantastic job of it thus far. But I wonder how long it'll be before the fizz of the attack of the drivers behind starts to fly out the bottle once again. As meanwhile, Koeman's looking around the outside here versus Daniel Lee, and in fact Lee having a brief moment off circuit there, a poor run out of turn number 17. It wasn't off track. In fact, we can confirm going through Hog Pen at 17, and therefore losing the place to Joe Newman. And meanwhile, Emil Koeman's now trying to get involved here as they make their way through the left-hander in NASCAR bend and up towards left hook. And as they come on through the left-hander there, Koeman's again really trying to force the move here versus Lee, and will be in a very adventurous. I mean, we've seen some aggressive drive from Koeman's in the past, aggressive but fair, we should point out, but there Koeman's really trying to get the door open versus Lee and saying to him, look, I've got all the pace in the world right now and I'm coming through, but Lee not responding to it and doing very well there to make sure not fall foul on the battle as they make the way into turn number 10. As they come on through, but they're going to settle down for a brief moment. Definitely, this is a different time than Emil Koeman's we're seeing on the grid today, and we absolutely love to see it in terms of him wanting to battle hard with everybody in the gold class as he makes his way through Oak Tree and onto the back straight. As he powers his way up through the gearbox once again, it's going to be some time now where he's able to get close enough to get into the fight, and as he does, well, it does look as though at least the top 10, all gold drivers here overall and in the gold class, everybody calming down for a brief moment. But meanwhile, in the silver class, here is your class leader, Jeremy DeBova, and he's ahead of Hobbs by 8/10 of a second. And the question is, what happens to Glenn Humberstone for him to fall out of the lead of the class? We can inform you it was an off track for Glenn Humberstone that upset his momentum, and this is exactly what happened. As he made his way down into what would have been their turn number 1, rear of the car letting go and sliding loose there, a good catch on the car, and that's how DeBova came on through. And we did see what was Lee Holmes fall off the circuit a little bit before that. We're not quite sure what happened to Lee Holmes to trigger that, but for Glenn Humberstone it was a difficult moment indeed. And as we return to live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, well, right now DeBova knowing that the job is not done with Hobbs so close behind, and Glenn Humberstone a further what is 6 seconds off, so therefore it's a battle for the top 2 spaces right now, and their battling continues in the long term. Perhaps we could see Humberstone get back into the mix, but definitely one now for Jeremy DeBova just to focus on after bringing home the 3rd place on the podium in our first race of the day. He'll be now wanting to consolidate this lead and make sure it stays that way all the way to the checkered flag. As he heads on towards West the Snake and turns 7, 8 and 9. Meanwhile, we do look from the leader of the silver class to the leader of the gold class, and this is Sedgley versus Thompson. These two battled hard in the run on the opening lap between them in the end, really having to decide who was going to be the leader of the 2 Olympus esports drivers. And now, as they make the way onto the back straight this time around with 11 minutes to go, less than 10 by the time they get to the start-finish line, we can see here how Thompson really looking for the measure here of his rival. And as they make the way towards turn 14, it is going to be a place swap here. Thompson takes the place, and it looks as though Sedgley just letting it go and letting Thompson fit back in, and Thompson having the better run, most definitely out of Oak Tree. But I wonder here whether the Olympus esports are focusing on the 1-2, and perhaps right now they're putting the driver who's the faster of the 2 up front, and then deciding to let Sedgley take the P2 position, knowing that he can make that car incredibly wide. We've seen that over the first 5 rounds of the season. And well, could Thompson here just run away with things, or could it just be that the tyres are starting to go off for one driver but not the other, given the fact, as we've seen time and time again in these feature races, normally the tyres on these 992 Cup machines last for about 15 to 20 minutes, and therefore it's all about balancing how much tyre wear you take out the car in those opening 20 minutes of the race, because if you take too much, then you're a sitting duck in the final 10 minutes. Conversely, however, if you take too little, then you've got to make up the places later on. Well, Daniel Lee right now has got all the tyres and brakes in the world, it would seem, as he goes up the inside of Kelly Ramadan there for P7 in the golden overall category, and as he winds his way out towards NASCAR bend, making another space. But as they come on through at turn number 3, well, right now the next target is Joe Newman with Simon B. Bamba still in P5, and making sure to dig in deep here as they head on towards what is the winding serpentine sequence of the Snake. But looking from them up to Philip Hammer, well, as we can see there, Medmo or Matt Edwardson in the YouTube chat saying, here comes Hammer, and indeed right now Hammer starting to close on Brown Sedgley. We've been waiting to see when Hammer would start to go on the offensive, as we do refresh to the overall timings there on the left-hand side of your screen, and that's the way they'll stay for the remainder of the racing today. And we'll right now Hammer staying close here to the back of Sprout, and two very different lines there between the drives. Sprout taking a much later apex on the second part of Oak Tree, and meanwhile Hammer taking a very aggressive apex, almost lifting the car up to use the curb to rotate the car. Nothing between them, both lines there enacting similar lap time, but Hammer right now really started to get a move on here, and perhaps that's what he's been waiting for. He's been waiting for the final 10 minutes and just keeping the tyres in check ever since he made the moves into P4, and now he can go for broke here. But meanwhile we look to the leader of the silver class, and it's Hobbs versus DeBova in the run on down the back straight. Side by side they go into turn 14. DeBova on the right of your picture, Hobbs on the left, and as they go under braking, well, DeBova tries to hang around the outside. This is fantastic racing, and Hobbs closes the door there. I think DeBova will feel as though the door was shut a little bit too firmly in his face, but Hobbs having to close the door eventually, and the FR20 Sim Racing driver doing so, but respectful racing between them as they make the way out of Hogpen and onto another lap. But Hobbs takes the lead of the silver class there. A good run onto the back straight, followed up by some brilliant side-by-side action, but Hobbs being firm where he needs to be. And now can DeBova find a way to come back? That's the question. As they make their way into turn number 1, we'll have to wait and see here. But right now FR20 Sim Racing looking to take the win in both races today, albeit they would have loved to have seen a 1-2 in both races, with Adam Greaveson being involved in that open lap incident. Well, for Greaveson right now he's P23, the last of our, well, in fact the penultimate of our runners, given the fact we've only got 24 cars running currently, with the 5 retirements of what is Sean Cranley Swodge, Lee Holmes, Dean Powell, Craig Shield and Alistair Hatcher. So it's been a difficult day for some, and Adam Greaveson right now trying to hold on for those last couple of places. P9 in the silver class, so we will get some points on the board, but a nice move from Steve Hobbs, as we can see the Luke Andrews saying, and as they make the way up towards what is turn number 10, where it does look as though here Hobbs has the measure of the boat as that gap is gradually opening up to 6/10. As they head down towards Oak Tree. Meanwhile, we look to drivers who have already cleared Oak Tree, and in particular, Daniel Sedgley here under pressure from Samuel K. Sproul, and Philip Hammer still there 5 tenths away, and this is a very interesting situation. As you can see now, Sproul, I think he's clocked on Sproul what's happening here, and he knows that right now Sedgley really is being used as the rear guard for Thompson. So as they make the way through 14 and 15, that's not to detract from the fact Sedgley should be P2 under his own volition, and that's where he is. He deserves to be there, but I think Thompson was given the right to take the lead from the two of them, given the pace he had in hand, and therefore right now they're trying to break away the lead of this race, and Sedgley trying to dig in as much as possible to go for P2, and Sedgley will be looking to try and channel as much as he can in terms of his ability to make that car wide here, and it is highly possible to defend well at the Virginia International Raceway given the way this circuit flows, but Sedgley also I think lacking that rear tyre life that other drivers have got behind him. But meanwhile, as we look behind further, Joe Newman looking up the inside of P5 versus Bamber there, he cannot find it, but Bamber does go a bit deep of apex, but this is going to give Lee the opportunity to try and take a look around the outside to the inside of two. Can't find a way in. And the Empire Motorsport driver here, I think, experiencing some frustration. But meanwhile, we've had a spin at what is left hook there for Samuel Kane Sproul. Sproul's gone round. We're not quite sure what the story behind that is, but what we can tell you is that does mean that Bamber now takes P4, and Sproul fits right into the face of Joe Newman there. And well, my goodness, you couldn't make this up for the Empire Motorsport driver. The luck he's not having today, as Bamber right now is giving some breathing room here, and Sproul with a spin will need to try and cool those rear tyres down in particular. But what does this do to the race, I hear you ask? Well, it means that Philip Hammer has found his way past Daniel Sedgley. Now we think there might have been a bit of an instant between Sedgley and Sproul, given the fact that Hammer has moved into P2, and we do get an immediate replay for you, and this is what happened in the battle for P2 between Sedgley and Sproul. Was they made the way through NASCAR bend, Sproul getting the better exit, there's no question about that. Looks up the inside, goes in a bit late on braking. I think he wanted to commit to a move and realised the apex was never going to be his from that distance back, and in the end Sedgley making contact, and that is what led to Hammer making the move here through the snake. Side by side they went, with Hammer having the better run through turn number 5, and as they drag raced their way up towards turns 7, 8 and 9, one of them had to back out in the end, and who was it going to be? Well, neither initially, and in the end Sedgley backing out there 9. He was on a very tight line, and it was his car to lose then, and Hammer taking P2, and Hammer not being one to waste an opportunity. But with all that batting, it does mean now with 5 minutes to go, as we look to your live pictures, it is a 5.3 second gap to Patrick Thompson. The damage has been done for Hammer in terms of the fact Sedgley has given Thompson all the breathing room in the world to play with, and unless Hammer can magic a lap that's a second a lap faster compared to Thompson, he needs to be about 1.2 2 seconds, in fact, given relative lap time. I think right now Patrick Thompson's got this race to lose in hand. But as they make their way through turns 4 and 5, definitely a dramatic moment there between drivers, and as they make their way onwards, meanwhile, we do look to what is the battle for P4. It is the long traffic jam behind Simon Bamber here as we ride on board the gearbox and look back from the Britain for UKSimRacing admin team. Whilst things have gone silent in the silver class, ladies and gentlemen, so that's why we are focused on the gold class right now. If we do see battles building in the silver class, we'll let you know about it. Right now, Simon Bamber leading a line of cars, which is 6 long, himself included. It includes himself, Samuel Case Brown, Joe Newman, Danny Lee, Khalid Ramadan and Emil Koopmans, and Ryan Walker is only 4 seconds off of this and is closing fast as well. So it does look as though right now Simon Bamber really trying to bring about the truly trained, if you will, if we're to use the Formula 1 analogy. We said it in regards to Paul Busby when he was defending hard earlier in the season, but today Bamber really having to right channel his inner Jarno Trulli and trying to keep everyone behind for as long as possible here with the time remaining. He's doing so valiantly at the moment. Here comes Sproul, and as Sproul looks up the inside into turn 14, it's going to be too wide on the approach, but Sproul backs out there after what happened earlier on between himself and Sedgley into turn number 4. I think recognising they wouldn't be able to get the line in time, and the 912 car Bamber holds on once again. 3 minutes to go, and what is effectively, as we do have Thompson making his way onto lap number 16, it's another 2 laps remaining here for Bamber to try and hold on. But as they charged away onwards towards turn number 1, looking towards the back of this group, Emil Koopmans right now will be looking at this with eyebrows raised, and I think thinking, why am I not right in the thick of this? Why am I at the back of it? As they all concertinaed together under braking into the opening corner, and Koopmans right now, I think he's waiting for something to happen here in terms of an instant where he can capitalise and pick up multiple places. But I think it may be the day that never comes, to coin an American song, in the fact that it's been sitting here, everyone's keeping it calm. But as soon as I say that, Bamber's off circuit towards the tyre barrier. But for the UKSimRacing admin team 912, it's all gone tragically wrong. And well, what's looking to be a valiant defence has now ended up in defeat as he falls back to P11 overall, P10 in the gold class, and he puts himself between the silver leaders of Hobbs and Debova, bringing to an end their potential scrap on the final lap. As they make the way in the wind towards turn 7, 8, 9. We've had an off there for Emil Koopmans as well, so it's gone wrong for the Apex Misses driver. Well, there's a late twist in the tail. There's Bamber will gain 1 place back as we see Debova to straight line his way between Apex, so you'll get a slowdown for that. I think Debova doing so for safety there, given the rejoin of Koopmans being onto the fast part of the circuit. Understandable when all things are considered. But meanwhile, we look a bit further back to Glenn Humberstone here, who was recently been passed by Marcel Fritsch, albeit for overall P15, not for class position, with the gold driver ahead of the silver driver currently, and Humberstone right now staying in a position to the end by the looks of things. But meanwhile, whilst this is playing out, we have the opportunity to take a look back at what happened to Simon Bamber, and this is what happened to the UKSimRacing admin team driver. So making his way into NASCAR Bend on the brakes here, and just carries a bit too much speed. He misses his braking point, and well, such an easy thing to do at these late stages, and I can imagine those brakes are really hot right now from the hard work he's putting in. And then Emil Koopmans only moments later coming on through turn 5 into the snake and hits the curb there, and it unsettles the car, and Koopmans into the barrier with only a couple of laps to go. But meanwhile, as we return to your live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, we do look to what is Samuel K. Sproul trying to keep Joe Newman and Daniel Lee and Khalid Ramadan at bay. So now Sproul has the unenviable task of trying to hold on a P4 before all is said and done. And this is the final lap. They are on to lap number 17 of 17 as it will be recorded today. And as they make the way in to left hook, Sproul doing everything he can to try and make amends for what was a very difficult race number 1 by finishing inside the top 5 in race number 2. And right now with Joe Newman at 4 tenths behind, at this rate of momentum he may be able to do it. But as they make the way on towards turn 7, 8, 9, you can imagine Newman will do everything he can to try and find one last way through for that P4 position. He's been staring at it for so long, but he's just never been able to claim it. And as they come through the left hand at turn number 10 and down towards Oak Tree, well, if it's going to happen, it's going to be on the back straight here, given the fact that right now it does look as though, oh goodness me, Sproul loses the rear of the car and breaking into 12, and as he does so, Newman gets on through. It's going to be a battle side by side between Sproul and Lee here as they drag race their way up towards turn 14. Lee's got the tyre of Newman off in the distance, but Sproul's got a lot of straight line speed in his favour. But Lee does get his nose ahead here, getting ready to go into the braking zone. Side by side still, Sproul's now starting to enter 6th gear, and with that they'll be into braking. It does look as though Sproul will take the move as Lee straight lines on into braking and knocks Khalid Ramadan there. But meanwhile, as they get it wrong, one driver who's got it so right today is Patrick Thompson, who as he makes his way to the line will take the win in the feature race here at VIR in gold class and overall for Olympus Esports Vanguard. In the end, 3.5 seconds clear of Philip Hammer, who takes P2, and a brilliant return to the podium for the Team Germany driver today. A double podium will win in the first race of the day. Daniel Sedgley P3 and rounds off the podium there for Olympus Esports Titan. Head of Joe Newman P4, head of Samuel K. Sproul P5, and then it will be Simon Bamber who finishes P6 at the end, ahead of Ryan Walker P7. Steve Hobbs comes on through to take his first win of the season, the silver class. P8 there for FR20 Sim Racing, ahead of Emil Coutens P9. Second place in the silver class, P10 overall for Jeremy Debova for DPR Bowman Challenge, and then it will be Nathan Foster and Khalid Ramadan P11 P12, with Corey Lazarus behind him, Marcel Fritsch P14, and then rounding off the silver podium is Glenn Humberstone P15 overall. The ATEC Tech Racing driver, I don't think we'll quite believe how today has played out. It's been ups and downs in equal measure. Alex Hiscox in the end at P4 silver class, P16 overall, ahead of Sean Dobie with another great top 5 of the Clicks Racing driver as he crosses the line there, P17 overall, and then it will be Wayne Basson P18 ahead of Richard White, who will be coming through in due course. It will be, I think White's had a moment with the barrier there and coming on down through turn number 15, so therefore the privateer will just need to try and limp the car through the last couple of quarters. It's not looking a happy car, the number 8, but I think he will be able to get it round just about as he makes his way out of 17 and up towards the timeline here for the Briton. And as he does head to line, that'll be a confirmed P7 in silver class, P19 for Richard White. And then it will be Lee Deemer, who is at P20 when all is said and done, as he makes his way to the timeline here. And the last of the top 20 drivers there overall for Fix Auto Aberdare. And then our last finisher in this race will be Chris Eddersford, or at least on the lead lap, we should say, with Adam Greaveson and Paul Joseph Cliss already finishing the races. And the same for Daniel Lee, who retired 1 lap from the finish, so he'll be classified as P22. But Chris Eddersford there, P21. The UKSimRacing admin team driver showing quite a bit of pace late on in both races, but it's just not working out in the second race of the day. And we're back to the drawing board for the 888 driver, but still plenty of rounds to come. But what a race it has been, ladies and gents. Indeed, the sprint was full of excitement, and this second race today has been no exception. But meanwhile, coming on to other stars of the day, FR20 Sim Racing's Steve Hobbs, as he makes his way on down the back straight there, and he'll be definitely feeling as though everything has worked out in the racing here, albeit not quite another 1-2 for FR20 Sim Racing, but still, 90's been able to make it a second podium in a row, but more importantly for him, his first win of the season, and that is going to have him absolutely beaming as he is surrounded by his teammates. But ladies and gentlemen, if any drivers they have caught your eye, have caught your attention, and you feel as though they've been your driver of the day, we do recommend that you let us know by voting for your driver of the day using the link provided in the UK Sim Racing YouTube chat just now. It's a quick and simple Google form, but do let us know who your driver of the day was over the course of today's racing at the Virginia International Raceway. Was it Steve Hobbs, for example? Perhaps it was Philip Hammer's charge back onto the podium and his first win of the season in the sprint race? Or was it somebody else further down the field? Perhaps it could have been, say, Simon B. Bamber for his defensive efforts all the way through the feature. Well, only you can let us know. And indeed, our last driver of the day in terms of last time out at Watkins Glen was none other than Alex Hiscox with 46% of the vote, and we look forward to seeing who the driver of the day is for VIR. And we should point out the votes do close as of midnight tonight, British Summer Time, or Universal Coordinated Time +1. That's UTC +1. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, as the world drivers make the way into the pits, well, it's time for us to make way to take a look at the results. And well, here are the results after our second race of the day, and well, what a race it has been. But in the end, after all of it, Olympus Esports Vanguard's Patrick Thompson taking the win there by 3.5 seconds over Philip Hammer from Team Germany. Thompson making his way on through after a close-knit battle with teammate Daniel Sedgley early on from the sister team of Titan, but then making his way into lead, and after that, never looking back. And Thompson really demonstrating today the teamwork at Olympus Esports, but also that the outright pace at his fingertips for the Danishman. And well, we look forward to seeing whether that continues in a week's time. time. Philip Hammer in his drive to P2, making sure to follow up his first win of the season in the sprint race with a great podium, and that will give him some major points on the board to put him right inside the top 5, with Daniel Sedgley with another strong pair of performances, and the Olympus Esports Titan driver round off the gold and the overall podium there, P3. We then see Joe Newman P4, the number 97 driver for Empire Motorsport, finally taking that coveted P4 position, which he stared at for the best part of 28 minutes of today's race, only to see it all go wrong for the driver in front of him come at the very end, and a deserved P4 there for Empire Motorsport, ahead of Samuel K. Sprout, P5, and the Blackout Motorsport driver. I don't think he's going to quite believe the last couple laps in terms of seeing it all go wrong and dropping down towards the bottom end of the top 10, and it all go right for him and moving back up to P5, but definitely a valiant effort there from the 606 driver. Had a Simon B. Bamber, P6 for UKSimRacing admin team. Wasn't to be a top 5 finish today, but still one to watch out for the rounds upcoming, given the momentum he was able to bring to both races and also his defensive masterclass. Ryan Walker, P7 for Satellite Racing, and you've got to feel for Ryan Walker, taking the lead of this race very early on, but an unfortunate incident between himself and Dean Powell, seeing all of that prospect of another podium, if not an outright win, falling away from his grasp just as quickly as it fell into his hands. Steve Hobbs, your silver class winner, P8 in the FR20 Sim Racing number 7 machine, and a deserved win there for the FR20 Sim Racing driver, and with some major points to come his way, with Emil Koopmans and Jeremy DeBoer for Apex Missers and DBI Bowman Challenge completing your top 10, and Jeremy DeBoer following up a P3 in the sprint race with a second place in the feature, and definitely demonstrating that he's back on fine form. Not quite able to make a win today, but still some huge points in the bank account, and therefore his championship lead will continue to stand. Nathan Foster, best of the rest, P11 there for Empire Motorsport, not quite able to match the pace of teammate Joe Newman, but still getting some solid points on the board, and was effective at P8 in the gold class, with Khalid Ramadan and Corey Lazarus completing the gold top 10 at P12, P13 respectively. The SomSport driver, that unfortunate incident right at the end of the race, cost him dear after the contact with Daniel Lee. I think the two of them will discuss it afterwards and put it down as a racing incident between the two of them. Corey Lazarus, P13, the Blackout Motorsport driver, not having that much luck in the second race of the day. Indeed, inverted fortunes for him and teammate Sproul, where Sproul had the difficulties in race 1, but it would be Lazarus who had the difficulties in race 2. And then Marcel Fritsch and Glenn Humberstone completing the top 15. And with at that 15th place, Glenn Humberstone completing the silver podium there, finishing P3, and the silver podium of Hobbs, DeBoer and Humberstone. Behind the ATEC Racing driver, Alex Hiscox fighting back to P4 in class, P16 for Team Wales, head of Sean Dobie and Wayne Bassam. And then to complete the top 20 overall, Richard White and Lee Deemer, with Chris Edison at P21 there, and the last finisher on the lead lap for UKSimRacing admin team. And then our three drivers who finished a lap down, Daniel Lee, or Danny Lee as he's known, Adam Greason and Paul Joseph Clist, and then finishing 8 laps down, and therefore will be classified as a race finisher as he was able to complete over half the race distance, Sean Cranny Swash, P25 there for 24-hour punty people. Not completing over half the race distance and retiring early on, and therefore classified as non-finishers, Lee Holmes, Dean Powell, Craig Schill, and last but not least, Alistair Hatcher in a difficult race for the ATEC drivers, most definitely, and indeed one for them to recover from it next time out. But those are the results of our second race of the day, ladies and gentlemen, and well, now, with the race having concluded, it is time for us to get set for post-round interviews. We'll be back in approximately 10 to 15 minutes time, but whilst you are waiting, we'd just like to remind you that if you have been enjoying the racing action today, we'll do firstly make sure to subscribe to the UKSimRacing YouTube channel if you haven't already, so that way you can stay up to date with all the latest racing action that's broadcast live on this channel. This is the sole source for UKSimRacing League racing action. And also secondly, we'd just like to remind you that if you have been enjoying the racing and ever wondered how you can support UKSimRacing, did you know there is a quick way to do so via our affiliates? For we at UKSimRacing are affiliated with multiple sim racing and real world motorsport companies, which include Swelly Amida, Sim Racing Coaching, Race Anywhere and Demon Weeks. And if you do head to our website, that is UKSimRacing.co.uk today, which you'll see on screen right here and now, there is a page at the top there which is for our Discord. And if you do click on that button, you'll be taken to our Discord, and you need to go to that Discord for 2 reasons. Firstly, if you ever want to be part of a grid for a UKSimRacing League or special event, well, it is a mandatory requirement to be part of our Discord, so that way you can receive all of the pre-race briefings and pre-race instructions. But also secondly, joining the community means that you're able to capitalise on our affiliation status with a number of companies, whereby only on our Discord are discount codes available with said companies, and therefore when you use one of those codes as part of your purchase, will you as the consumer get a discount, which is a win for you. And here at UKSimRacing, it's a win for the community, for the simple reason that we are a non-profit organisation, with all of our affiliate earnings being invested back into the community to fund future series, including the GT3 League, the Porsche Cup, which you're seeing currently, and we've got plenty more planned for 2023 and onwards as we go from strength to strength. So therefore, do remember, a little purchase can go a long way in supporting UKSimRacing. But right now, now, we're going to go a little way away to take a brief breather and get ready for our post-round interviews, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere. We're back in about 10 minutes to find out our thoughts of our drivers with regards to the racing from today. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for us to conduct our post-round interviews. And today, we've got two drivers available for comment, and they're both from the gold class. We'll be firstly hearing from Olympus Esport Vanguard's Patrick Thompson, the number 92 driver bringing home a second place in the sprint race and the win in the feature race, all after a third place in qualifying. So you could say the results got progressively better and all worked up to the ultimate goal of being on the top step of the podium come the very end of racing today. And then we'll be hearing the perspective or the priority of Danny Lee in the 188, whereby it all seems to go very well in qualifying, and in both races showing great pace throughout, but an early instant in the sprint race and a late instant in the feature race, seeing him relegated to P22 overall in both of them. But again, that result does not represent the pace he's bringing to the table and the brilliant race that actually found himself caught up him all the way through. But without further ado, we now do have joining me in the interview none other than Patrick Thompson, and he does join me. A good evening to you, Patrick, and well, what a day of racing it's been today. A third place in qualifying, a second place in the sprint, and then the win in the feature race. Sounds as though it's been a near perfect day for yourself at Olympus Esports Vanguard.
A bad one. I mean, you could always have wanted to have both the wins, but that's something we'll leave for another time. Also, I figured out after I've done the qualifying that I was still on my race setup, so that's probably something to note for next time.
Oh, goodness me. Well, definitely giving yourself a bit of a handicap going into the race in today with that qualifying setup being not on the car. And speaking about qualifying, beyond the fact you had the wrong setup on the car, how did it feel in qualifying in terms of achieving P3 and how close it was at the front of the field?
It feels good. I thoroughly enjoy when there is close competition up at the front. It is rather boring in the races where someone is just like 10-15 seconds ahead. So actually, it's much better when there is close competition, and I really enjoy it.
Oh, indeed, and the competition coming thick and fast, and going into the race, knowing that you were starting on the second row of the grid, and in front of you would be the calibre of competition, including Philip Hammer. Was there a particular way you wanted to approach the sprint race, particularly given the fact one of your traditional teammates, Thomas Cope, not on the grid today, so really you're leading the charge for the Vanguard part of Olympus Esport?
Well, I had a mission going into the race that we would try and see if we could keep the Olympus streak going. Sadly, that was broken by Philip. Shout out to him. He had a massive drive in the sprint race. I got stuck in behind him, and I think the dirty air just gave me too much struggle with the tires towards the end. So I couldn't really push the car as I wanted to. So the overtaking opportunities were slim to none, rather. So
I see. And just talking about running behind Hammer, we saw for the opening 6 minutes of the sprint race, you're able to stay incredibly close, at certain points getting within 2 tenths. What does it take to run that close to another car, particularly given the dirty air effect and these cars not having that much aero on them?
yeah, well, it's rather fun because in these cars, it's kind of like somewhere between, I would say, like right up their back bumper and down to three, just about 4 tenths behind them. You don't have massive effect of the dirty air, but when you get like outside between like half a second and up towards close to the second, is where you really start to feel that dirty air, and like the car just understeers and oversteers and everything is just terrible.
Oh, indeed. And then having to back off in the second half of the sprint race and seeing Hammer run away gradually to victory, albeit we say running away, but coming home half a second clear. Did you start to get a feel for what you wanted to do in terms of your approach in the feature race? Did you start to sort of look at the lines he was taking, potentially where you could battle with him if it came to it in the feature?
No, I usually tend to take the races one at a time. I find it for me personally, it's easier to have a mental reset and just go out there and treat every race like it's their each and own. You don't want to think about what you could have been doing differently and what you should have been doing differently in the middle of a race. You will just start making more mistakes if you're to you start focusing on everything else instead of driving.
I see, and it's a very good point to talk about mistakes. We saw a large number of drivers in both races get it very wrong here at VIR today. This is not an easy circuit out of the ones on the calendar, albeit we could say every circuit on the calendar has its own challenges. But in your opinion, what makes VIR such a challenging circuit to just keep it on the track, let alone drive at the pace you're delivering?
Well, first of all, VR obviously it has little to no runoff areas. So once you make a slight mistake, it's game over. You're going off to the shadow realm. There's grass, and we all know with iRacing's grass that you cannot stop the car. It's literally impossible. And also VIR is just a very technical track. It has a lot of like different cambers. It has cambered turns, off cambered turns. It has uphill, downhill. It has everything, braking zones where you're still turning while braking, like massive trail braking. So it's really a technical and difficult track, but it's really fun when you nail it.
Oh, indeed, and we absolutely loved it and had fun in the commentary booth with regards to the racing throughout and seeing you go on the charge. Speaking of which, in the feature race, starting from what was P7 on the grid, Philip Hammer alongside you, and in the opening stage of the race, it looked pretty calm, and then suddenly the chase was on for the lead.
Yeah, I think everyone sort of just. There was an incident at one point in the first few laps, and there was a bit of a gap up to P1. Then everyone closed up to P1, and we kind of became a group again. And I think because of how these cars are, when you're in the slipstream of a car that's behind another one, you just don't get alongside them. So you were kind of just stuck in like a train for a while until someone dared to do a move, and yeah, eventually something started moving around, and moves happened.
Well, indeed, and in terms of moves happening, as we look back at some of the footage now, where you were P4 chasing after Lee Holmes, your teammate Dan Sedgley, and also what was Simon Bamber, we saw Bamber going quite defensive early on in the race, and how in the end everybody came together at very short notice. Just on that, were you looking to try and make individual moves, or was it more waiting to see whether somebody would make a mistake, given the fact we saw so many mistakes early on?
I was definitely using the first part of the race before us deciding that it was time to move forward, to just get a feel for how the drivers were handling the track, getting to know where their braking points and turn-ins were, so I could calculate hopefully a successful move. So a lot of it comes down to just like biding your time and figuring out that exactly right point. I was definitely hoping that someone would make a mistake, but up in the front, it seemed quite free of the mistakes this time, actually.
Oh, indeed. And in the end, we did see a couple of mistakes creep in, particularly for Lee Holmes, who fell off circuit, and also for Simon Bamber, who in the end lost it slightly and ended up giving an opportunity to your teammate, Daniel Sedgley. You found your way through as well, and then the two of you, I, Dan, and yourself, seemed to have a little bit of an exchange down the back straight.
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that we chat over Discord when we're racing. In turn in the team, and Dan and me decided that it was probably for the better that we swapped around, so he could maybe try and hook on the back of me, because I just had a tiny bit more pace than he had this week.
Well, understandable. And from that point onwards, it looked as though you were able to break away, albeit I could imagine that you weren't taking it down a notch at all. You were pushing hard all the way to the end of the race in order to bring home a win by over 5 seconds.
Definitely. I mean, I was towards the very few last laps. I was slowing it down just a tiny bit because the tires were starting to struggle a lot, and I'd rather finish the race than end up in the tire barriers like many did during the race. So yeah, but other than that, it was just full push and set the sail ahead.
Oh, indeed. And in the end, winding down and crossing line 3.5 seconds clear from Philip Hammer. A deserved win and therefore 2 podiums in the bag today. And well, with a week's break, it looks as though you've got your championship right back underway where you left it off. And how are you feeling now for what will be our visit next time round into the circuit of Circuito de Jerez?
Well, I mean, definitely gives me a morale boost that I can deliver some promising results, especially on a track that is as difficult as VIR. But I'm yet to purchase Jerez for next week, so that's I really need to get started on some practice. Haven't tried a single lap around there yet.
Oh, goodness me. Well, it sounds as though a lot of practice is upcoming, and well, we wish you all the best with that. But just before we do let you go, Patrick, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast tonight?
Definitely. Well, obviously, I'd like to give a shout out to the team Olympus Esports. Thank them for taking me in before I was really anyone, and letting me grow. And then I would like to thank my best friend Sonny, who watches along, my girlfriend as well, and just everyone who watches along and cheers me on in these races. It means a lot to me.
Well, Patrick, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the interview. Congratulations once again on your double podium, including the win in the feature race. Definitely a way to get your championship campaign back underway since the mid-season break, and we look forward to seeing plenty more of you in Spain in a week's time. So hearing there from Patrick Thompson, our gold class driver who absolutely delivered on the major stage today, and what a stage to have to deliver on, the Virginia International Raceway. Hearing from him there in terms of qualifying, a mistake in terms of putting his race setup on the car over the course of the 8 minutes. And well, why is that mistake, some of you may be wondering? Well, in terms of race setup, there'll be more fuel in the car, which is natural to try and get the car to the end of the race unscathed on fuel capacity, and therefore not having to visit the pits, which visiting the pits in these races is definitely not something you want to do. But on top of that, the car might have been a little bit more stable compared to a more aggressive setup to go qualifying to get that ultimate one lap time compared to the consistency needed in the races. So you can imagine Thompson really qualifying with a handicap and still putting it P3 on the grid. It's a big what if question. Could he have perhaps been on pole? At least on the front row, we'll never know. But what we do know is that when it went into the sprint race, he kept the pressure on Philip Hammer, stayed very close, enjoyed the challenge of staying in the dirty air, but in the end had to back it off given the fact that temperatures were starting to get too high, and in a way had to settle for P2. But then going into the feature race, we saw things relatively sedate at first, but when the incident started to occur, he was able to capitalise and then worked with Daniel Sedgley to try and break away. And with the two teammates and the sister Olympus Esports teams deciding to swap things over, given that Thompson had a bit more pace at that point in the race, he was given the opportunity to charge off into the distance and take victory, and a victory that could bode very well in terms of its importance as we go deeper into the season, as it does mean that now Patrick Thompson really on course for being deep inside that top three as we continue in to next week's racing. We're now coming on to our second interview of the day, ladies and gentlemen. We've just heard from our gold class winner in the feature race, and now we're going to be hearing from another one of our gold class drivers who in the end definitely saw plenty of action up and down the field, albeit perhaps not all of the action being the way he wanted it to play out, but still it's always good to see him enjoying the racing, and I've heard he's had a fantastic day today from his perspective, and it'll be none other than Danny Lee who gets ready to join me in at the interview room, and we'll get to hear his perspective. But as he does get ready to join me now, I think he will be joining me very briefly. In fact, he does join me. We hear from the man himself, and as he joins me now, good evening to you, Danny, and well, what a pair of races today. In both of them, you ended up finishing P22, but as I've said to our viewers so far, those P22s do not essentially capture the battling action you found yourself engrossed in over every lap of the racing in the sprint or the feature. It looks like you enjoyed it out there, but perhaps just wanted to get some points on the board today.
Yeah, you're spot on there. I think, as you saw, race one was kind of over before it started, but that gave me the feeling like I'm actually going to enjoy this. The car felt amazing. I felt like I was really on it. Yesterday I had a race around about this time and just felt completely sort of sluggish. So I'm really happy that it all sort of came together and I felt comfortable with the car. I had a great time this race. I absolutely loved it. This is one of the best iRacing races I've had so far, but definitely far and away one of the best, most action-packed Porsche Cup races I've had so far. Plenty of racing in the feature from start to finish, and it made me feel like I was it kind of made me feel like I was in a different class for most of it. Obviously not right at the end, but for the large part of the race, I felt like I was absolutely flying.
Oh, most definitely. And speaking of flying, in qualifying we saw a season best from yourself, P6 on the grid, and a qualifying session that was always going to be important going into the sprint race. How did you feel your qualifying session unfolded?
Qualifying went really well. It was a good 3 tenths better than my previous best, but that's really because VIR being so complicated and not yet having loads and loads of running. My optimal was about a second faster than my best lap, so I just couldn't string it all together, and it tended to be situations on throttle, so I just needed to nail the perfect line. It's a long lap with loads and loads of turns, although it's about the same length as Spa in terms of time. There's so much more to it, so qualifying went great, and I was happy that I was so high up. As a note, I'm keen to note, I'm still on them G93 pedals. I'm still using them with only a true brake mod, and they are proving to be the perfect partners so far. I'm really impressed with it.
Well, it's definitely noticeable in terms of the strength you're taking from session to session, and with the setup, how it's shining through in the car. And then going into the sprint race, like you say, it was really over before it started. A good start, but then a couple of laps in, a bit of an entanglement with the Apex Mrs. Machine of Emil Koopmans.
Yeah, we didn't even get a couple of laps in, to be fair. Although there was so much action, it probably felt like you were a good couple of laps in. There was so much going on. It was just a lap one tangle. We got side by side in the first couple of corners. Either he didn't know I was there, or he just misjudged how much space was there. And my front right entangled with his sort of left rear. And when that happens, he ends up kind of getting turned a little bit, and I end up having to steer more into him to kind of counteract it instinctively, and then you kind of lock together. So we both kind of waltzed our way off track and nudged into the tyres. I don't know whether he got a meatball flag for that, but I did. So from then on, it was just scurrying to tell the pit crew not to put on tyres and fuel, and also just to spend the rest of that race, that first sprint race, getting back up the field, seeing if I can reclaim any grid spots for the feature race, and luckily caught a handful of folks, because all I had to do was essentially a splash and dash, get whatever damage was there repaired, and then just use the rest of the race one as a bedding in practice session, and got a few spots back up so that I could start the feature race in 22nd.
And then going on to the feature race, 30 minutes of racing, it's a long time in the Porsche Cup Series compared to the 12 minutes in the sprint. And we saw you making a lot of progress in the opening stage. And in fact, by the end of what was lap number 4, if my memory serves me correctly, I think you'd gained somewhere in the region of 10 places and was still making headway. We saw some incidents out on circuit as well, but soon you found yourself latching onto the back of a long train of cars all battling for P4.
Yeah, every single lap in that feature race felt like a bullseye. There were multiple laps where I overtook 2 people. I know there's a pace difference. Obviously, I'm starting below where the grid expects me to be because of the calamities in lap 1. But even so, because of VIR's opportunities, there's plenty of opportunities to overtake if there's even a slight pace difference. So it makes you feel great. And then, as you mentioned, you soon find equilibrium with whoever you're supposed to be kind of tangling with, and that was around about 6th, 7th, 8th in the end, with Joe Newman, Khalid Ramadan. I can't even remember who else is involved because it seemed to swap and change multiple times, but that was a wonderful battle in what is essentially a slipstream train. I was just constantly nipping at the heels of whoever was at the back of that train, hoping that I could at least dislodge them so that they were closer to me than they were to the car in front of them, so that my slipstream would be stronger than theirs. But it just wasn't happening. It had to be all down to mistakes, little inconsistencies, and they were hard to come by, but I absolutely loved battling all the way through the feature.
And on some of those battles, one of the ones that really stood out to us in the commentary booth was the battle between yourself and Khalid Ramadan, where we saw you multiple times caught behind the Somali driver, and in the end almost poking your nose into each and every corner, looking up the inside from very far away as if to say, don't forget I'm here. I have to ask, were you trying to get him to make a mistake by looking at his rearview mirrors rather than at his braking points?
It always is. When there's people driving in a train and they're all really consistent drivers and they know what they're doing, all you can do is maybe nudge that 1% chance of an error up to a 2%. It's small, but you never really know. You've got to throw your chips in. If there's nobody behind you that you got to worry about, then make the person in front of you worry about you. So, you know, if they're also following somebody, they've got to watch the car in front, they've got to watch themselves, and they've got to watch you behind you. And nobody's got 3 pairs of eyes, nobody's got 3 eyeballs. You can't always focus on multiple things at once. You have to try and at least give them a little bit of brain static that causes a mistake, just something to give you the edge, even if it's just to, as I mentioned earlier, just drag on their heels a little bit, cost them a couple of attempts, so that when they get to that long back straight, they're just not as close to the car in front as you are to them. But it wasn't happening for a good few laps, and at one point I got close enough to him at the back end of the lap that I just couldn't see the track, and I lost my line, couldn't see the track, and I ended up dipping a wheel on the grass on the outside. Luckily, pulled it back on track, but by then that brought me back into the clutches of Joe Newman. It was a whole new battle after that.
Oh, indeed, and we've just seen that very moment on the replay footage that's in the background currently. But with regards to them falling backwards behind Joe Newman, we saw things take a bit more of an intriguing turn as we got into the final 10 minutes of the race. Of course, these feature races see the tyre life push beyond its ideal range of 15 to 20 minutes. I have to ask, how did you feel with the car in the final 10 minutes, and where were you in that sort of relative train? 'Cause it looked as though, if anything, you were getting racier and racier before it all went wrong.
Yeah, tyres didn't feel that bad. I do love the longer races. The longer races are better. If I could have put more coins in a machine and got another 30 minutes out of it on the same set of tyres, I would, because I believe in my own ability to make things last longer than everyone else can. Even when I'm behind the train of cars in front of me, I notice that they're wiggling around, all sorts, taking all kinds of sort of exaggerated lines that I don't feel the need to. So I think that I'm better on my tyres than most. But it only takes a couple of traction losses to kind of throw that away. So I felt really, really strong all the way through. But at the very, very end, a couple of corners till the finish line, myself and I think Sam Sproul together, we both braked at the same time. But he had the inside line where the camber is a bit more favourable, and I had the outside line. And I've never, ever practiced trying to maintain that outside line. And that's when I found out that you can't really do that. So yeah, I would love to say it was a great advert for the True Brake, and for the most part, it definitely was. I absolutely felt confident in my braking, made some big sends under the braking zones, especially into turn 1, which is the most uncomfortable braking zone ever. But at the end, ego just got the better of me. I tried to hold it. I didn't want to lose it, but I quickly found out that you can't hang it around the outside of there. And unfortunately, Khalid Ramadan got collected by my mistake, so apologies to him for that.
Well, it was very unfortunate, but at the same time, you went all in for it, and well, towards the end of the race, it's always to be expected. Everyone's going for gold or going for broke, but still enjoying the races today, showing great pace and also nerve in battling situations. How are you feeling for next week's race at the Circuito de Jerez?
The same as Patrick. I don't even own a circuit yet. I've not had a chance to encounter it in officials, and I don't run many officials these days anyway, just due to spare time. So it's going to be learning a new track by the time we get there next week. I should be fine with that. Don't usually have too much trouble picking it up and getting on the pace, and it'll be fun to find out what's going to happen. So I'm really looking forward to it. And after tonight, as hoped, the races are only getting better, but the car is only feeling more comfortable, so I'm enjoying each race more and more as I go. So next week and the weeks after should be even better.
Well, that's absolutely great to hear, and we look forward to seeing you continue to take strides forward as the season goes on. But just before we do let you go, Danny, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast tonight?
Well, thanks to the grids for being amazing races again. So much fun tonight. Really had some incredible, interesting battles with people, as expected, of the UKSR League. Thanks to yourself for the broadcast and the admins for putting it all together, and for VIR being accused of being a broken record. The True Brake. Thanks to AXE Sim for providing it. These humble little entry-level G923 pedals are really punching above their weight for a 65 quid device. It's doing wonders, so compliments to them.
Well, Danny, compliments also to yourself for joining me in the interview this evening. Congratulations once again on your performances, albeit the numbers may not show the fun you had out there, but it was great to see you mixing up with the very best in the gold class, and we look forward to seeing plenty more from you in a week's time in Spain.
Thanks very much. Have a great evening. See you next week.
You too. All the best. So hearing there from our gold privateer, Danny Lee, and it's always a pleasure to hear his perspective on the fact that he's relatively new to the Porsche Cup 992 machine. He mentioned that in his first interview of the season, how he's getting to grips with it, and getting to grips with the new technology he's also running as well on the sim racing rig, and 2 and 2 is definitely clicking together and making 4 right now for the number 188 driver. And again, we got to see that today, albeit P22 in both races, and openly admitting in the feature race he went for a bit of a bold move which he hadn't practiced, and therefore he came unstuck. of his own volition, but at the same time, really now starting to feel the confidence in the car, and that's what it's all about here when competing at the top level. It's about feeling the flow and going absolutely for it, and we saw throughout the entirety of the feature race how quickly he carved his way out through the field, finding opportunities around the VIR circuit that's normally relatively tight, and despite the pace difference, able to eke out overtakes, 1 or 2 a lap, and quickly find himself onto the long train in that battle for P4. It wasn't to pay off this time, but you can imagine next time out, a major result could be waiting for Lee. We'll have to wait to see, however, whether he can make it come to its fruition, and well, time will tell a week from now. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our interviews for today, and you've heard from the 2 drivers, most recently Danny Lee in the Gold Class, the Pro tier in the 188, and previously we did hear from Patrick Thompson, the Gold Class Olympus Esports Vanguard driver, who brought home the double podium and with it the win in the feature race today. Congratulations to them on their respective results, and thank you to the both of them for joining me in the interview room. It's been a pleasure to talk to them as always, and we look forward to plenty more interviews a week from now in our next round. But with that, it is now time for us to wrap up. Now, as we do wrap up, ladies and gentlemen, firstly, we would like to just remind you that if you haven't voted for your driver of the day, remember, votes do close at midnight tonight, British Summer Time or Universal Coordinate Time +1, and the link is available in the YouTube chat once again. And with that, we'd like to say thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the UK sim racing community, then definitely make sure to check out our official website. You saw that pop up earlier in tonight's broadcast, and that web address again at uksimracing.co.uk. You can go there today to find out all the information you need about our upcoming and ongoing series, and also about who we are as an organisation and what we do on both the sim racing and the real world motorsporting circuit. We've also got our official social media there at our Twitter. If you're a bit of a social media person and want to follow us on a platform, we recommend you do so on Twitter at twitter.com/UKSimRacing_. We'd also like to take a brief moment to say a big thank you to our affiliates, which include firstly Swellion Meadows Sim Racing Coaching, and well, the creator of the motor racing checklist, Swellion Meadows Sim Racing Coaching can help take your sim racing drive to the next level. Whether you're looking to gain the 10th, improve your approach to the racing line, or develop your consistency, Swellion Meadows has a coaching course to meet your needs. Plus, with Swellion being a multi-time champion of official iRacing series, including the 2021 PSCC, you know you're receiving coaching from the very best in the industry. Also, we'd like to say thank you to Race Anywhere, the provider of curated sim racing equipment and to only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community. Demon Tweaks, the provider of the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide. So no matter what your level of discipline, Demon Tweaks could help drive you to realise your motorsport ambitions. We also have SimLab, the leading manufacturer of high-quality sim racing related hardware. As a proud partner of Mercedes-AMG Petronas Esports, SimLab aims to enhance virtual racing experiences with uncompromising solutions that push the boundaries of esports and indeed make them the go-to brand for quality sim racing rigs. We also would like to say thank you to Amazon, the company striving to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, the Earth's best employer, and the Earth's safest place to work through the provision of concepts pioneered by Amazon, which include, but are not limited to, Amazon Prime, Amazon Alexa, and Amazon Fire TV. And lastly, SRC Driver Academy, part of the wider sim racing community. They are a division of sim racing community. You can elevate your sim racing skills with the SRC Driver Academy. Their team of experienced professionals is dedicated to helping you reach your full potential without compromising on quality. But why choose them? Affordable quality coaching. They have experienced coaches who provide valuable insights and a competitive edge. They make high quality coaching available to all at an affordable price, tailored to your needs and goals. You can learn race strategies, precision driving, and much more. And they offer virtual coaching sessions at nearly all hours of the day, every day, ensuring flexibility for all. So join SLC Driver Academy today and unlock your true sim racing potential. Visit their website to learn more and accelerate your sim racing career. And thank you to our affiliates in all once again. But now, ladies and gentlemen, attention turns to next time, and with it round number 8, our second endurance race round of the season on Thursday, the 3rd of August 2023, and it'll be at none other than the Spanish circuit of the Circuito de Jerez Angel Nito. It'll be the first time that the UK Sim Racing Porsche Cup League has made its way to the Jerez circuit, but who is going to come out on top after what will be an absolutely intense 45 minutes of racing? We'll find out a week from now, but until then, thank you very much for watching. We have been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.